Ready? Affirmative? Okay. Call the meeting to order at 7:32. First item on the agenda will be the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Next time we're doing it in French. Because I had to do it Friday at the school. Me. Privilege of the floor. Negative. Approval of the minutes of October 11th. Any question, Frank? Yes, sir. Oh, I thought you had a question. Okay, I'll second. That was too sweet. Okay, first and a second. All in favor?
That was Frank and Alan?
Yes. Treasurer's report.
Oh, very quick.
Yes, it was.
I'll be brief. Good evening, everybody. We have the October, or the year-to-date through October 31st revenue and expense report and balance sheet. I guess this is month 4, so we're a third of the way through the fiscal year. And next week we'll be getting our next tax revenue check, 40% of the total, so about $460,000. So next week, if it would be okay, I guess we could put it in the Orange County Trust account, because we're going to fund the key checking account tomorrow, so we can put the good amount next week in the money market, earning a little bit of interest. But anyway, back to the reports. They're more or less staying where they had been. No real surprises. The salaries are slightly under year-to-date by like $342. I don't know if that'll stay for the whole year, but it should be more or less pretty close to the whole thing by year end. But it's been fluctuating a little bit, paycheck to paycheck, depending on some of the hourly employees. So more or less it should stay close to the line, but it could be over or under by a slight amount. Nothing else really stands out here. The books have been brought up a little more current, up to date. We did a big Baker and Taylor bill the other day, and I have one upstairs that has September and October invoices on it, and that's going to be taken care of this week, but it's not yet in the report. But I think the total is like $4,000. It's yet to be entered. So even when that's entered, the book lines are probably under, but maybe a little bit under, not as dramatically under as they look on this report. I showed Frank what the stack looked like on Friday, so and I think Ellery saw it too, to appreciate how much $4,000 worth of bills is like 2 or 3 inches thick. So it takes quite a bit of effort to process them. That's why I always appreciate everybody's patience that the books are always a little behind. So, but more or less when that's added in, it's probably slightly under budget, not as dramatically under budget as it looks like on this report. There's been no real maintenance issues or anything that's come up on the building lines. And nothing else that could stand out. The loan was paid on November 1st. On the balance sheet, the report shows the loan at $391, but a day later, on November 1st, we made the November payments down to $384,296 on the loan. So again, like I had mentioned last month, of the interest and indebtedness line, the interest is just the interest, and then the amount that it's showing that we're under is really just the amount that's going to principal. So that's kind of how we have that set up.
Say that again?
On page 2, on the interest on indebtedness line, we had to put the whole payment amount somewhere. So, because unless we had a line like principal amount paid, but we just put it all under that line. So really, the interest is on there, and then the amount that's under between the budget is the amount that's being applied to the principal.
So the whole amount is spent, it's just not reflected that
Right.
way here?
Right.
But I was going to ask you about that. That was one of my questions. Is we have a monthly payment of $8,600, $700, and
Right, something like that.
$8,600, $71 or whatever.
Right.
Why don't we just show that as an expense item?
Because the amount that's going to principal is really reducing the liability, so it's it wouldn't be on the revenue and expense
But
report.
it is an expense, we're
Well,
making
it's-
it as a monthly expense.
But it's reducing the principal, so it's showing up on the balance sheet as the loan payable amount being lowered. That's the way we have it set up. On the expense side, we just have the interest amount going to the expense.
Sort of warps the ideas when you're doing a budget, trying to use these things to work a budget. I mean, we've got a budget for $8,679.01 a month to pay the mortgage.
I guess what we would have had to have done was make like two lines, one, the amount budgeted for the interest expense for the year, and one for the principal reduction. But we didn't have the accrual schedule from the bank at that point. I guess we could always ask once, they could tell us how much, you know, each
Like
month.
Okay,
an
but I
amortization
think-
sheet
Yeah,
kind of thing?
exactly,
Yeah.
right.
But we're still, it's really an expense item. And you're mixing, I think you're mixing up two different things. If you wanna keep track of the balance, you can use an amortization schedule and keep that on your balance sheet, but on your income and expense side, you do have that interest and it's gotta come out of the budget. It's gotta be accounted for in the budget.
Right, right.
And we have no way of accounting for it.
Yeah, the way we
Principal
have it
and the
set up
budget.
now, we're just showing that the amount that it's below is just the principal amount. That's, you know, that's why, you know, it has budget 8,667, and then the interest like 2,000 and change each month, and the amount that we're under is pretty much the amount that's going to principal.
As I remember, we set up something like $65,000 in a new building,
It was six.
a new building expenses, and that was also to use to amortize the loan. So, and that number seems to have disappeared.
Well, the 65 was the
New
number
building.
from the prior year that went to Hoffman, and then it was, I think it was changed to 104 to reflect the full 8,000 and change times
Right.
12.
Times 12.
Times 12. So it's just a question of how you want to show it, but it's working out the same way.
Yeah, but he has a good point with, it looks like a huge,
Under.
yeah, it looks like a huge amount under when we are actually spending all of that, so
Right.
I don't know the best way to set it up, but.
In my
Yeah,
mind,
it-
it's almost like there's two budgets, there's the operating budget and then there's this capital budget, so to speak, which is the loan.
Yeah, because it.
And we're keeping the two separate from each other.
Except that we're mixing them.
Well, we
Because
should-
the-
we should keep them
because the
separate.
budget
Right,
amount-
no, well, yes and no. I mean, you're using it as an expense. You can keep track of what you spend is adding to your assets or reducing your liabilities as a separate item,
Right.
but a balance sheet is a balance sheet. And a revenue expense sheet is a revenue expense sheet. And when you write a $8,679.01 check every month, that's an expense, and we don't show it anywhere.
Maybe you should ask the treasurer, you know,
What the best way to
what
show
the
this?
best way to show this is.
Okay. I mean, I could maybe, if he thinks it's good, we could add another line under interest and make principal amount paid or whatever, something like that.
Right, just because it's the budgeted amount.
Right. 'Cause
I
for the
mean,
budget,
since
only-
we don't deduct interest, what's the difference? It's principal, it's interest. You wanna keep track of the loan, that's a separate
Right.
entity, but
Now,
we're
is,
making the payment, I'm sorry.
no, I thought you were done.
Because when I book the entry, we'll have them make the payment from the account automatically, and they'll fax us over. I showed you guys the sheet,
Yeah.
exactly how much went towards the interest and how much went towards the principal. And then in QuickBooks, I'll put the interest amount as a, debit to the interest expense, and then the principal amount to the balance sheet account hitting the loan. So that's how it's recorded in QuickBooks. But this is really just of how we want to set it up on our monthly.
But then where is the revenue stream that pays the principal? Where is that coming from? Out of the budget, out of somewhere else?
Out of the budget line for new loan.
But then we
new
never
building.
show that on our sheets.
Is it set up like this because there's some kind of accounting thing at the end of the year about our debt, paying down our debt?
It could be. I'll have to double check with Rob, but
Yeah, I just know from my own taxes, the interest you pay on the debt makes a difference, and I was just wondering if that's why it was.
right.
set up.
But we don't really have tax
No,
returns,
right, but
so
we have to account for different things like that.
right. It'll still show how much interest we paid for the year.
Right,
We'll get a form on that. I think when we did the budget, maybe we could have made 2 lines, one for, if we knew the exact amount, we could have just,
Sure,
then every month it would just be on, we paid this much interest, we paid this much principal.
Okay,
So we had the loan last
right, but
March,
we,
so
but
we had the
every-
amortization schedule.
I don't know if
Do
we
it.
ever got one,
We don't
maybe we
have
should
an
request
Just
one.
I think
Ask
you,
that,
yeah, you gave
yeah,
us a
if you
copy.
just ask them for one.
You gave us one.
We did give you one? I don't know if it had the month-to-month payments though, and
Just
then,
a few months,
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
the last fiscal year.
and also depend on if one month we paid it on the second instead of the first, it might change
Yeah,
by a few dollars, so it's never gonna be to the penny, pretty much, you know, unless every month we paid
It's
it on
not
the
a
first.
level debt?
It is, but you know, if normally the payment is done the first or the second of the month, but there was a day where the first or the second was on a weekend and we weren't here to do the transfer or whatever, it could be off by a day or two, you know, whatever that would add up to in interest, but,
yeah.
I mean, it's more or less pretty close, it's just a question of how we wanna, you know, account for it and show it on here, but.
Yeah.
But I'll check for the amortization schedule to see what we have. I don't know if we had one for the
But it
whole.
still just seems that those payments should be coming off
Mm-hmm.
our basically our P and L, operating and, operating expense. And
Okay.
that's my opinion anyhow.
Okay, I'll follow up on that. No problem. We'll check on that. But you can see it's, you know, it's going down, so it's going in the right
That's
direction.
exciting thing.
Right.
So another question on page 2 of the balance sheet, which again, I understand the restraints that you're working on, you're using a canned program that's not built for libraries, not built for municipals, but
Mm-hmm.
line 3900 returned earnings. At the end of last year, we had 81,000 there. Now it's 237,000. So I assume that 156,000 is our
Oh.
excess of
From last year.
revenues over expenses from the fiscal year that just ended.
Yes.
Yeah.
This
Where
is-
is this money located? Because it's not accounted for in current assets.
It's Dave, the auditor is in closing out the audit, did the journal entries that have hit some of these accounts, so we'll have to, you know, see exactly what they did. But they sent journal entries to Rob and Bridget to put in, and between the two of them, they put stuff in, but it changed from the closeout of the prior year. That's why, like you said.
No, I mean, but where is the money located? Because we're showing that we have cash in Key Bank of 41,000, and we have cash at Orange County Trust of 449,000.
Right.
And I know the 449,000 is taxes,
Mm-hmm.
and what we moved in Key was moved out of the Orange County Trust. So where is this money physically located?
Well, that money was left over in the Key at the beginning of the, you know, the fiscal year. It
So
was,
that's another account at Key that's not in addition to this Key, the 41,000 at Key.
no, it was in that account that had the 41,000. It was money that was left over. The retained earnings was money that we were under budget last year. That was money that was left in the Key checking account at the end of last fiscal year. Remember, we ended up with,
Okay, so where is it now?
Did we use it over the summer, is that what you're saying?
yeah, it's been used since then. It was in the
But it was
Key
July
account.
and August and September, we were paying bills out of that account, so that account now went down to 41,
Right. The expenses since then.
yeah.
Okay, so we borrowed $196,000 from line 3900 and put it in the Key checking account.
Right, it was money that was left over that we were, last year for the year, we were that much under budget. Like that report the other day that we looked at on Friday, we were, you know, approximately that amount under. So that amount would be the amount that would go to retain earnings at the end of the year when they closed the year out. And it was money that was sitting in the Key checking account as of June 30th.
Right.
I don't recall what that balance was off the top of my head, but I remember for June 30th, we said the numbers stayed roughly the same as what it was the prior year, even though we paid down $150 in debt. We made it 450. So we ended up with the same or a little more money, even though we paid down that big loan amount. So the money in the retained earnings was money that was left in Key at June 30th.
Okay, I can understand that then, but then there was 81,000 in returned earnings anyhow.
From prior years, right.
In June.
Right.
And where was that money?
That was from retained earnings is accumulation of all
Where
prior
was it?
Was
years.
it
It's
in a
part
key
of that.
account?
Yeah, it was part of the Key, part of what was in Key.
It's part of that 237.
Right.
Because I remember at one point we were discussing the key balance was getting low and you were concerned that we had to move.
Right, we have to do that now too.
But you had all of these reserves in there.
Well, that was, the reserves were the amounts that were left at the end of the year, but the reserve doesn't change when that money gets spent out of the Key
Right, I
checking
understand.
account
I
during the
understand.
year.
Right,
So
that.
that number will always stay the same until the year end, and then we,
Reassess.
right,
But I mean, right now, the money's gotta be somewhere because we've gotten back the money that we
right,
borrowed over the summer and the money that we spent over the summer.
Right.
We've gotten that and we spent that.
right. It's been expensed a lot of it,
This
right.
237,000 is now sitting in the Key account.
It's now been,
No, it's
Mostly in
Mostly
Orange
have been
County.
spent.
it's been spent out of the Key account.
Right.
And it's been reimbursed into the Orange County Trust, right?
No.
That's the tax disbursement.
Orange
into
County
a-
Trust is the tax money.
Right, the tax money that came in. We paid our expenses out of Key.
Right,
And that
Right.
237 is what we used to pay our expenses until we
Right.
got our tax money into
Right.
Orange County Trust.
And we got it and replaced it, so where is the 237? Where is it physically located?
it's not physically located there. It's money, it's just the accumulation of last year. We were under budget by 170,000. So to close the year out, the 170 goes to retained earnings to make the accounting equation balance out. But it's not physically like,
I understand it, but where, the money's gotta be somewhere.
Well,
The actual dollars are somewhere,
if it's
where
under,
are
if
they?
it's under equity, why
It
is it
was-
listed, why is it listed under equity?
the difference between your profit and loss always goes to retained earnings. So to balance it out.
That's what we said, we were using a cookie cutter, so, it's not built
The
for
program,
us.
the
That's
program.
right.
Right.
But it still doesn't tell us where the money is.
But if I understand it, we had this lump money, it's like a reserve
Right.
fund balance.
Right.
When the fiscal year ended, we used that fund balance over the summer
Right,
until the tax money came.
right, the tax money
When the
came,
tax
so
money
forget that
came-
happened.
Well,
Forget
the
that
tax-
happened.
Well, the tax money came, and that went into mostly Orange County Trust.
Mhm.
Right.
The fund balance will not be, it's almost like it doesn't exist at the moment.
Because it was-
There's just gonna be, there'll be a new fund balance at the end of this fiscal year, because if we take all the money that's in the Orange County Trust, that's there and that will arrive when the other tax checks arrive, it will exceed our expenditures by about 237,000, or perhaps more, if we have a year will be more than.
But that should have already happened.
No, it shouldn't have because.
We got a $500,000 check on
right,
October 1st.
and that's it right there in the Orange County Trust.
Right,
It's
Right.
part of that.
And we had 237 here as of July 1st.
Mhm.
Right. And July and August and September we spent
no,
it
we didn't have
running the library.
237 there, we had 81 in reserve and retained earnings.
Well, that doesn't mean necessarily that we had that much in cash left. That's just the difference of prior years between revenue and expense. If we had that much under budget, that's not going to equal the exact dollar amount we should have left per se. But that's the accumulation of the profit and loss, and that only gets adjusted at the end of the year. So there's journal entries in there that the auditors did that I didn't really look at yet, and it's not finalized yet.
I think I have to come over and say hello to you. But the general fund then, where is that located? There's $139,000 in actual dollars there.
This is the breakout again of all prior year fund balances. I really will have to refer that to the auditors because they tinkered with this and see how it has the 248 at the very bottom, the net income.
Mm-hmm.
That's where, if you compare that to the first sheet,
That's the sum of the returned earnings plus the capital budget.
that's our current year where we're at the very bottom, July through October, 248, 268, 24. So if the year ended now, that 248, 268.24 would get added to retained earnings, and then that would be the closeout for the year. So that's how the year end closes, because for the accounting equation for assets and liabilities to equal, has to be assets equals liabilities plus owner's equity. If we have a profit,
I think you made a mistake, because now you're saying that there's $500,000 in reserves.
well, this
And
is
we don't have $500,000 in reserves.
this is July through October. We're that much profitable, because we're for the whole year. It doesn't mean we're going to be that much. It's just right now, the year to date, to show that it's flowing correctly in QuickBooks is July through October net ordinary income 248, 268.24, and then on the balance sheet for it to even out, it's 248, 268.24. So at the end of the year in June, whatever that is, that'll get moved into retained earnings and then spread among the fund balances.
You know what I think? I think we need a bookkeeping system that is more in line with our business, and trying to jury work our business into the bookkeeping system. Is there any way that we can contact your equivalents at other libraries and see how they keep track of
Yeah,
their
I could.
books?
You mean like how many people use QuickBooks in relation to
Or
to
if
us?
they have some quirk in QuickBooks that we don't know about.
Okay, I could inquire about that.
But it seems to me that we've got an
We struggle every month with some issue will come up almost every month, where what we're doing and what the numbers are don't seem to quite make sense, and it has to do with the bookkeeping software.
and the way we're keeping out, and the way we're utilizing it, and it's really, we're pushing ourselves into a software that's a generic type of business software that's not even made for municipal government.
Right, like maybe we're being overly complex or something.
I have a feeling we are. And it probably pays to talk to other libraries to find out what they are.
Okay.
These are tend to be terribly confusing.
Right, absolutely, okay. But I know that those two numbers agree, because otherwise it wouldn't be in balance. So now you see that it's all the profit, revenue and expense total is moving over to there, and then it's in balance. But at the end of the year, they do journal entries, and they're still in the process of doing that. You know, they just finished the June 30th, 09. They're going to be coming this Wednesday to start talking about June 30th, 010. But so the equity section is journal entries at the end of the year, but the QuickBooks is definitely working correctly now, because the number on the net income for the year agrees to the profit and loss statement. But I hear you saying we'll definitely,
Maybe even talk to the accountant and see if they. He might have pride of authorship in this system, and he may not be the right source of trying to find a system. I don't know.
And part of the other problem is too that there's so many people, not a lot with their hands on it, but there's us, and then there's the auditors, and there's Rob. So if they're doing the year-end closeout, and they put a journal entry in, unless I go in and look at that specific line, it could be entries in there related to the year-end. But I try and concern myself with just the actual operating revenue and expenses for now, and then when the year-end comes, that's when they could, adjust what should be in general fund, what should be in capital, and everything else.
But, and there's another thing that concerns me is you've mentioned a number of times the auditors bringing up journal entries, and in my experience, certainly in business, journal entries must be approved by a very high level of
Right.
in an organization.
Mm-hmm.
And in our case, we're left with the board has got to, and the board used to approve any journal entries that were made. We have not voted on a journal entry in the 2 years that I've been on the board, and we're obviously making them. There's something
right.
remiss there.
Usually just made, but for the year-end audit, that's when they would be made, more or less.
And if I
They're not made
remember
internally.
at the previous director, at most board meetings did have the board vote on a journal entry or something, that there was something going on.
To move lines around, possibly, like move money from one
But
line
it's just
to-
illustrative of the fact that the board should be, the board has a history of approving journal entries, and they seem to be having journal entries without the board even knowing about them now.
Right, right. I'll find out. We're gonna speak with the auditors on Wednesday, so I can definitely, I'll ask them about this whole section and any year-end journal entries, and then we can go over them. I'll get a grip on them. But all the actual operating results that I'm handling are all accurate and up to date and pretty much current. And like we said, the thing with the loan, that's really just a presentation thing of how we want to show the principal and the interest. And I only bring that up because we're not, obviously we never budgeted to have the full amount be interest. It's just that we showed the full amount of the loan and then the interest, and then the difference would just be the principal that was paid. So it's really just a presentation.
Because we'll be doing a budget pretty soon, and we're gonna
Right.
need to know this.
Right, and it'll probably be easier next year because now it'll be the second year with the loan in, so we could, change it how we want to show it in there. But you see,
We're
it's,
looking at $108,000 item that's gonna
Right,
be in the
right.
budget, so it's-
right, it's a big, almost 10%, right? Absolutely. Okay.
Thank you. Any other questions on the treasurer? No. Have a motion to accept?
I'll make that motion.
Ellen and Norma, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Director's report.
Good evening, everybody.
Good evening, ma'am.
Are we on, camera running? It's all right. Well, Jack and I are still somewhat backed up due to our Audrey's been out, and she hopes to get back, but even if and when that happens, she'll probably be coming back to less hours than she's been used to. We have somebody else that's been filling in that seems to be working out well, one of our clerks that has some office background. We just removed her from the circulation desk for a number of, I guess we're doing 6 hours a week or something like that. And that seems to be working out in the interim. Hopefully Audrey will be, last we heard, she should be back on her feet, believe it or not, in a week or so. She was out with pneumonia and some heart trouble for a while. But she always bounces back. She's tough. Most of this month was fairly just business as usual. It was fairly busy. I was able to go up to Saratoga for another class. NYLA, New York State Library, puts on their annual event in Saratoga. Usually, actually, Eleanor was there for Thursday, Friday, and a little Saturday. I just went up for the first day to partake of some of their courses. Two courses this time having to do with conflict resolution and time management. And as usual, they were great. They were very helpful. It's just interesting to see how other libraries operate, what their various sizes and all over the state. And you hear some of the same complaints and some of the same praises. And so it's interesting to talk to, just to get a chance to talk to people outside your area, because sometimes you're sort of in your own cocoon, and you don't realize there's a lot of good information out there. Just it's a matter of tapping it. One of the things that I became more and more aware of as I was there, even though none of the classes had anything to do specifically with long-range plans, was that the issue came up in a few discussions about whether a library had a long-range plan, how long a range plan was it, and what was it composed of, and I realized that, you probably could tell by this, that I think it's high time we start to talk about that, because we don't have one, and we haven't had one even, I would say, for the whole time I was working as a reference librarian, and then as head of reference, and even as assistant director, because so much of the energy was being siphoned off into the building project. There was no real, the building became the plan. And as Robert Hubscher said last time around, the building, the building in a sense is just the materialization, the material part of an overarching set of principles, and I think it gets difficult to sort of be at the helm of something that doesn't have a North Star, that it's sort of using to get its direction. So this has come up too, because I've had a lot of people approach me with good ideas over the last couple months, and after a while you just feel like you're going in every direction. So you want to, oh, that sounds good, and you sort of run that way a little, for a little bit, and then that sounds good, and you sort of go over there. And I think it would help to start to, for us, and I think we may need to get someone from RCLS. As I say, they run the gamut. Some people's long-range plans are 2 pages long, some are textbooks, so it depends on the library, depends on what you want to do, depends on how far ahead you want to think. But, and this kind of also speaks to my idea of having a personnel plan in place too, that would be in harmony with the long-range plan. I think it's important for us to kind of figure out how these ideas kind of fit in with what we're trying to do, so that I can get a better sense of whether it's worth the effort of kind of pursuing them. Before too much effort's put into it, I want to make sure that we're in agreement about what we're doing and where we're going. Now, I don't expect you to. There's nothing that we can do tonight about this. I just bring this up as something to think about, because it has been quite a while that we've been kind of operating without that. And it's you can do it. You can do it. I just think after a while you sort of can also lose momentum if you don't know where you're trying to get to. So, having said that, I mean, I really have, the onus is on me. I have to do some research and see how, I've never been through the process before. As I say, it can be as complex or, as you want to make it. Some of the professors at these classes I've been taking all offer their services. I'm sure there's a fee attached for helping out, for helping out to decide what that is. I mean, I think part of the reason that it can be a difficult process is you really do need somebody that knows how to elicit information from a population. You need somebody that knows how to get, pull some information about what people are interested in, what the services are they like best, what they don't like. I mean, we can do informal stuff here, but then you're only getting the voice of people that are here all the time. I mean, part of what we want to do is sort of get people that aren't here all the time. Actually, I'm supposed to wait till the end before we have the minutes. But sorry. But I mean, I'm almost done anyway. It's just something to start to think about, and it's something that I think could take a year to get a real plan done. I don't know. It could take 6 months. It depends on how much time you want to spend in researching. I mean, that's the biggest part. It's just gathering information to make decisions. It's just trying to, whether it's I mean, there are various. I know people will say the website's one way, definitely. Surveys and the newsletters another way. There's we've had samples like this done at the reference desk or in the children's room, and they're helpful, but they're narrow, and they're because of the same people. People that come to programs say more programs. People that like fiction say more fiction. To get sort of a bigger picture of how the library fits into the community, or how your constituency would like it to fit into the community. So it's just something to think about. As I say, I've been thinking about it in the back of my mind, and having gone through these classes the last few months, and talking to others and seeing, it just seems like a healthy, well-functioning library. It's a necessity, really. It's the only thing that you have really that helps keep the mission in focus and helps keep everything kind of everyone pulling in the same direction. Just that you're never going to get full 100% agreement, but a general consensus of where things should go, where they are, and where they should go. Having said that, most of the rest of the month was taken up with some building concerns. We're working on our new telecommunications in-house phone system, which is in place now and seems to be working. We had some glitches with the alarm system that we're working on. But Danny took care for the time being of the railing in the back, the painting, and it wasn't just painting. I guess he had to wire brush the rust off. And he's of a firm conviction that it's only going to last about a year or two before it has to be replaced entirely. But he didn't. I mean, it looks cosmetically like new, but he said it's just rusted inside out. So.
He doesn't think much of Chinese iron.
What's that?
That he said.
Oh, the China. Okay, yeah, no. Let's see. The other thing I wanted to mention, I'm just sort of rattling back here, is I know the newsletter has come up couple times people have come to me asking about the newsletter. We definitely are spending, I don't remember how much less, we talked about that, but if you remember the percentage less than it used to be?
Like 30% or
It's
something.
around, something around 30.
Pretty good amount.
Every time we do it, we kind of cut a little more of the cost off, because we know how, you know, we sort of have gotten it down to the point, we used to have 500 left over, then we had 300 left over, you know, we're trying to narrow down the fat, and that's worked. But Michelle Muller came up to me with an idea that I thought was a good one. I remember when I brought this up once, Frank didn't like the idea of not having one, and I understand the rationale for that, because it's the only thing we do that reaches everybody. So Michelle thought it might be smart, in terms of cost cutting and also having that effect, of only having the spring newsletter go to everybody, the one that's for the budget, the main, you know, that has the trustees, that has the budget in it, has the numbers, that has the rest of them that are just program oriented, we could do online, and that would obviously save, you know, 75% of what we're doing now in terms of if people are interested in cutting more of that out. I have a colleague that works in Kingston that I mentioned that we still do a newsletter, and she said, "How Mayberry of you." So to some people, you know.
I like Mayberry. I like Mayberry.
But just so you know, that, you know, the options out there, that if we want to say, I mean, that is an expense, there's no doubt about it. It's not cheap to do, even when we have a fantastic deal with Konica, and we have, I think we've, you know, where we used to spend $600 or $700 on our designer, we now spend, you know, $150 for that part of it, and I think we've got it about as down home as you can, you know, and still have a newsletter that goes out every quarter. But if you're looking for another way to possibly, you know, shave some money off it, that's something to think about. I thought it was a
Do you
good
want
idea.
to discuss that, or?
You can discuss
How much
it.
is it costing now?
You know,
The
Jack,
newsletter,
something.
$750
Each time?
for a total cost of $3,600. No,
I think it's 3,600 for the year, is that what's budgeted?
That's for the first
It's a prorated budget.
for the first 4 months. So 900 a month, 10.8 for the year, I guess, somewhere
but
around
it doesn't go out every month.
For $10,000, we're
It's the
going
way the
to
bookkeeping is set up, we
multiple
have to prorate
times
everything
of
per
going
month.
to
We
every
just spread it
person
evenly,
in the,
yeah.
Oh, gotcha.
every
Just
one
take
of
the
our
yearly thing.
constituents. It's, what other way do we get into every one of our
Right.
constituents?
I think
I
it's
agree.
probably one of the most important things we could do
I do
to
too.
gain support
I
in this
truly
library.
do.
Get the word out, whether
Wow,
it's
you guys
Mayberry.
shocked me. I never know which way you're going to go. Well, that's fine with me. I
Mayberry.
just throw it out there because
It's Mayberry.
I've heard some, you know,
Andy
complaints.
says,
So.
That's right.
I mean, when you get to a point that you prove to this board that most of our people are online and
Right.
approaching the library for services online, that you know, I mean, you saw my email the other day. There's 16, at least from the last census, there's 16,000 people in the in our service area. We have 7,000 library cards. There's a lot of people there that don't know what we're doing, and yes, I'm sure 50-60% of them are gonna go right into the circular can, but there's going to be 8,000 people, 5,000 people who are gonna hear from us, and
I find it
it's
funny.
the only
because
time they ever hear
usually
from
the
us.
attack is that, you know, that the books and all this are out the window, that it's all electronic, and then I say, well, let's move things a little electronic, and it's.
Yeah,
no
but,
good.
I mean, it's you
I'm just
can
saying.
look.
I'm just saying.
I think you can look to the future
Well,
of that, but it's not.
I think
Yeah.
he makes a good point,
Maybe-
when the usage shifts.
Sure.
And the usage of the
Sure.
library
You're
is
ahead
more
of the
digital
curve.
than
Sorry,
the-
Michelle.
That's right, you're too
I
far
thought it was a
ahead,
good
that's
idea, but I
You're
just,
so
I
cutting
just,
edge
you know.
are.
It is a good idea, but
do you have the means of doing this? Do you have a mailing list in a database that you could check off, click on,
No, we'd have
to
to.
show that they don't want the
We
paper
would have
mailer?
to do something like that.
You
right,
know,
sure.
that
No,
would
there's
have to be
definitely there would be hurdles to get to that point, and I have no problem with doing it. I mean, it's just as easy. We're gonna have to. The thing has to be created anyway. It would just be that electronically.
Right.
You know what I mean? It doesn't matter to me. It's just me
Right.
taking it over to the print. It doesn't. It's no. You know, this is just a. You know, a thought. If there's places that, you know, I mean, I don't know where I heard it, but somehow it came across a lot of things come across my desk. You know, that there was some grumbling about the cost of the newsletter or something. I'm just saying if some other people are hearing that and want to.
I know I had a bunch of grumbling and I answered it, and pretty much the way I answered you was that I felt that we needed it. I mean, people come to me asking me why we should get rid of the newsletter, and I went back and said no. In fact, I even had somebody come and say you should reduce it to 9 by 10, 8 by 10 instead of 8 by 11 or 8 by 14.
Yeah.
I just think until we have proof that the entire world, as it consists of our patrons, have gone
Right.
digital.
Well, the idea early on,
that we still need paper because there's still, you know,
I guess.
families out there.
Well,
who
how
don't have
many
computers.
hits do we get a month on our main
Site?
page?
I'm not sure.
No, we'd have to check
Do we
that.
We'd have
Yes.
to put a tracker on it.
Well,
We don't?
but the host.
We'd have to track it.
Yeah.
I mean, we should be able to get that, shouldn't we?
Yeah, we could
But
put
there-
a we could put a
there's
tracker on
A
it.
quick way to find out, but and unfortunately, it doesn't tell you the people who dial up 10 times a day, like me.
10 times a day, Frank?
No, sometimes
I think it's something we need to keep in.
dial up.
That's what I heard you say, dial-up.
But even if some people are online, you want to keep it around because it's got a schedule of different events. You'd have to print
Right.
in your own printer to have a hard copy to put on the bulletin board or to save things that you want to save. Having a paper copy really is useful.
And I had two other things. One, since we were talking about that horrible program, isn't there something that you could send Jack to, like you've been going to?
Oh, yeah, it's funny when you brought that up. I was going to say, occasionally, there's on the director's list, I see the question come up, believe it or not. A lot of people don't even use an electronic, in the RCLS Orange County system, don't even have an electronic bookkeeping system yet. So they're like, you'll hear Betsy will get on and say, has anyone ever heard of QuickBooks? Did you use that in the library? So
we're ahead of them?
I think we're ahead of them. We'll double check. There may be. I've never heard of one tailored to government, municipal. There must be, and if there's not, there must be a way to tweak, the one we have to work. But I think it's QuickBooks. But we can check into that. But yeah, it's funny because it comes up. Periodically you'll see another person bring this up about, is anyone using the computer to keep track of their numbers? Or, this is like so. Probably tiny little libraries somewhere. But
The other thing I wanted to ask you is that Ellen Mary had mentioned that we are and have been at times way over our occupancy for this building, and going over the children's report, they have we readings at 62 kids.
I think
but
that's
that says 4
sessions.
sessions.
Right.
But it was so
Yeah,
that's the same
that's
kids 4 times. Okay.
Yeah.
And the same goes for the 77.
Yeah,
It
right.
says 77 people
Okay.
all at one time.
It's, I
Sure.
looked at that, I
That
said,
was
oh
my
my,
first thought too.
I
Was
said,
how did
oh
it get
my
through?
God. What do we do with them?
Yeah, right. They toddle it in
Okay,
here.
that's clear. Sorry, Dave.
But they each show up with a mom and a sibling, and that's where we end up getting in trouble
Okay.
for that
This
20
is a.
minutes.
Oh, sorry.
Can I?
Nope.
You could talk now.
Yes, you can ask them. You finished giving.
Yeah,
the
sorry
report.
about that. I'm just trying to keep to the.
There's a
So,
code.
a
We
code.
keep to the code, yeah. There's a pirate
Okay.
code we get.
Well, I think that the building and the plan on where we want to go are linked entirely,
Oh, they
because
can't be separated.
right, they have to be, because we may not have the space to do certain things that people might ask for, and I'm not saying a building will dictate everything, but it has to be considered when you're doing the plan.
Well, I
So-
think we should decide we're gonna go this spring and go on with a question, and either they want it or not. If they don't, then we go on
But
and
a plan also, and as Hubler mentioned, a plan might dictate a building also. They go hand in hand. So, so it's just something, a point I wanted to make. But I also thought well, aren't there examples or studies that we could draw upon the programs that people are thinking of implementing a few years from now? I mean, it doesn't seem like it's a mystery that it's rocket science where, you know, a major study has to be performed and it takes a year to put something together, but just, you know, survey the other libraries or look online to see what their programs are and what they see is happening in the future to draw upon to have, you know, a template for us to work through, share with the public and come up with something like that. That's just what I want to say.
I mean, I can honestly say that when you made your statement, my attitude was is that we're the civilians in the room, you're the professional. You go first with the plan.
With the plan, sure.
And
Yeah.
talk to us about
that's a
it.
good point.
You're the guy that
Yeah.
Actually knows how to do
And what
it
it might
and
cost
what
us
to
some
do.
money, and that's why I bring it up in advance.
So
It's
I
gonna be
was hoping
something
that you and your people.
I think to some degree, but I think the ones that I've seen that have been done right, you know what I mean, that really, that someone has come in that has worked with it, because I do believe that, you know, there probably will be a time that you'll need someone that has some know-how that I don't have, that, you know, whether it's just the data collection or talking to focus groups or something, you'll need some of that information, I think.
Yeah. Well, you might also spend some money and get a big report, and then 2-3 years from now, take that off the shelf and blow the dust off it. And you know, I don't know how much they're really used. The detailed planning.
Well, part of it is we
documents
have
that
to
people
have
put
it.
together.
We have to have it for the state report. It's another one of those things that if they're not in place, again, I have never seen a library closed for lack of one, but it's along with lighting, along with, do you have an active long-range plan?
When does that state report due?
January. Now we've gone, well,
This January coming up, or
We've
the
got-
January?
every January.
20
Every
years from
January.
now?
Every January.
Every
January.
January.
Okay, because I think, you know, when I read your report, I put exclamation points there because I thought you made some excellent points of, you know, of us trying to figure out where are we going. The building is certainly one of our big things that we're thinking about right now, but maybe we need to set up a timeline for ourselves of things that we want to work on. How do we want to go about working them? You know, maybe we want to wait until the Citizens Advisory Committee gives us their report, and then we talk about where are we going with the building, where are we, you know, how are we going to approach this and that, and just give ourselves time to work on all of these things, to every meeting kind of plug away a little bit. You know, maybe one meeting it could be we review long-range plans from other libraries to focus our thinking, that kind of thing.
Or have a special meeting,
Work session,
you know,
yes.
to just cut
Yes.
through it, do what we can, and then have these other follow-up meetings that, you know,
Just to give
finalize
us
it.
focus.
So we would have
Yeah.
our New Year's
Brainstorm.
resolution for the whole year, and then we would have the long range goal plan, as I see it, is the
Mm.
long-term goal. I'm going to learn French, and that's going to require that this month I do this, and that
Yes.
this month I do this, and
Mhm.
that's the value of the long range plan, regardless of what the long range plan is.
Mhm.
Even
Mhm.
if I never actually manage to learn French.
So you'd have
I
a
have that.
plan to come up with a long-range plan.
No.
So-
The long range plan itself is that the equivalent of I'm going to learn French and I'm giving myself 5 years. And that means that in January I will do this, and in February I will do that. That's the
A
value of the
timeline.
and that's right, and that's pretty much I
timeline.
think all they're after. And in order to have that, we need to know what is it we're here to do, what is it the public who uses our services want us to do. The public who don't use our services, why don't they, and what would they want? And that's all the things we have to factor in, correct?
Yep.
Did I understand?
Good points.
And Matt, I think you're losing sight of the track that, in all honesty, you've been doing a commendable job in short-term planning, which is creating long-term things. This child thing, the historical thing, you've really done a good job. You've been handling it. You've been doing well there.
And I think
So,
you
if-
and your people can huddle and talk about these things too, because you guys have the ideas. You're in the trenches.
To make suggestions to us, you know, bring it to us
right.
and say, you know, this is what we're encountering out
That's
there
our
in the
crystal
trenches.
So it's more of
And
a
if we
bottom-up kind
compare
of thing.
the long-range plans of, there are similar communities in Orange County. Warwick is not that dissimilar, Cornwall's not that dissimilar. If we see what their libraries long-range plans look like,
Can we use that as a-
and then
Yeah.
take the recommendations of our staff, and then we can probably come up with something. I'd like to be 2 pages.
Yeah.
I don't think we need
That's
to.
fine.
You know.
Yeah, I don't think,
And then, of course, that's
Yeah,
why.
you don't want an effort?
That's
Professor?
No, I don't.
we got a college professor here, we don't have time.
And then I think, you know, that it should be done before we do our budget, because it could be step one in some of these,
How to allot money,
yeah.
sure.
we'll-
Right,
we'll
if our
budget
priorities
our
are
staff.
excellent.
when you want to do it.
We might wanna invest in e-readers, ebook readers.
So you got iPods for everywhere.
Wow.
Mr. Digital.
No, not Mr. Digital. Look at my house, look at all the books I have in my house.
Challenge.
Mhm.
On the, one other thing, because we are getting ready to work on a budget and get a budget together in preparation for May, when it goes to the public. Speaking, April, that's even closer. Speaking for myself, I know we have, there are 3 of us new. I would love to have a workshop, a work session dedicated to how is it that how do you put a budget together?
Well, if you want the instructions on how to put a budget together, Matt and Jack would have to run that work session, but usually what we do is Matt and Jack sit down with everyone, put budgets together with a 0, a 1, and a 2 increase, things like this. We look at it, peruse it, and then we generally will have a work session if we're not all on the same page and to discuss which one looks better, okay, which line is gonna be moved here, this, that, and that thing. So that's what our work session would be about.
And we usually do that in January, right?
Yeah, so if you, that's why I don't know how the long-range plan, getting that done and the budget done by January, I think is a lot on Matt's plate, but it's up to him. That's why I wrote down in here to ask Matt when he wants to have the work session about the long-range plan, because I think the 2 combined is a lot in 2 months to ask for, but that would be up to Matt. But I think it's a lot on his plate. I mean, if we're not in January doomed, if we don't have it, I think we should get through the budget and then visit a long-range plan. But that would be up to Matt.
But I mean, it doesn't, not to overload you, but, it could be in March. By March, if we could see this part of a long-range plan from your staff. It could be that, just
Yeah.
that for us to have focus and a timeline of when, so that maybe our goal is to, by this time next year, to have the bulk of a long-range plan done.
Yeah, well, that should, be doable. Again, like with the budget, you would go to the department heads and get what they need, like the principals. Same thing with the long-range plan, you can have the department heads and things. I just think it's hard in 2 months to ask
No.
everything.
He shouldn't be doing that long-range plan in 2 months.
Right.
No.
Well, somebody had
that's-
said by January or something, and I thought,
No, no,
it's
but
a little tight.
No, small steps. That we as a board said, set up I will keep going back to that word, timeline. March or April, if we could see this, or next July, if we could see this part, next August, if we could see this part. No?
Yeah,
Am I-
Yeah,
am
no,
I
I think
not
it's
clear?
fine, and
Okay,
then we
okay.
probably
so
would have it done
yeah,
by
the
easy
first
next
rough draft
fall.
in
Yeah.
March.
Not even just.
Or we can just,
Points.
we could just add have a point,
Bullets.
an amount in the budget for long-range
Points.
planning.
Sorry, points.
Move that we accept the director's report.
Well, we don't have to
We
motion
don't have
it,
to
but
do
we'll do
that.
it. Thank you. And nobody else says anything? Great
Well,
job,
yeah,
Matt.
no, I do have something. We should we should plan for something right now, such as a meeting
For what?
to discuss it. I don't. Well, I
The work
guess you're
session for
saying,
the
you're
long-range
saying,
plan?
yeah, you're saying
Well,
we're
he
not
has
gonna
to
discuss
research
that.
a lot of things first.
Well,
He has to call other libraries, get online, he has to get the departments head together,
that's
they
his
have to research.
perspective. That's fine. If
I
we
mean, if
wanna
we were to
wait
have a
and
meeting, what would we
initiate
talk
from
about?
his what he provides, that's fine too.
Well,
I
that's
mean, as
actually
far as
the
a
way to
budget,
do
No, I
as soon
think
as things get presented to
can
us next month, we'll
Also put on our, little.
think.
Well, I
Caps.
think we kind of informally agreed on March, didn't we? That was my.
That was just a month that I threw
I
out
know,
there,
but it's
you know.
a workable thing, I think, March.
Okay,
January,
so-
we're gonna do the budget,
So
and which usually means
so we
it
probably
spills over
not
into
meet
February.
regarding this till
Is there any reason
February.
why we couldn't have a budget meeting in June? The budget election?
Yes. We are obligated to have, when we use our voting booths, to not have it conflict with the schools' use of those machines.
So June conflicts, cause they do
Yes.
in May.
Yes,
But if they have a
we
second
do
vote,
before
Yeah,
that.
if they
Right,
have
if
an
they have to have
austerity or a
second
second,
vote.
it will be in
Mm.
June.
So, Matt, did you mention that something,
If
that the
you-
long range plan?
The March, to the end of March
January?
is the
March.
latest we
Yeah,
can do
but
it.
it was been
by
without
last
it.
January and the
Yeah.
January before, we're not
So-
done either.
Okay.
I
I
think
mean,
we can
granted-
skate by another year.
Matt and his staff
You
are
could
also
scratch
working
something
on
out.
a
We could
needs
do it in
assessment
June.
as well. You know,
Well,
but
you
Rain
could still,
since
doesn't
Yeah.
have to,
June
60
That's all
pages
part
on
of
it,
it.
well,
And the
that's
board
fine.
has
Use
in the
that.
budget.
Scribble out the date.
I know,
That's
So
all.
that'll be our plan
completely
for March.
irrelevant.
It's fine, it's great. So we'll get through the budget and
Can
we'll
of
work on
worms.
that, and then who knows what's happening.
I opened up a can of worms. Do you
No,
agree?
it's good to have a plan, it's just, I wanted the timeline from Matt, just so he would,
Yeah.
you know.
that's a goal.
Part of the problem all along, or not problem, but the issue's been the building, and of course Pauline was thinking the same thing. It's very hard to plan ahead if you don't know where you're gonna be, so, I mean, no, as I say, as staked, and if you explain that to them, that you're in the midst of some transformations, you're not sure, you're not gonna come down on you for it, but, I mean, would be wiser to sort of know where you're gonna be. I mean, if you know, then make a whole, go off through all this stuff to make a plan, and then suddenly you have a different building where options are open that aren't open here, or, you know, so it would be. But I just think it's something that at least just start to mull over a little bit, you know.
And I don't think you belabor your metaphors at all.
Yeah, that was cute, yeah.
Any unfinished business? No. The
Yes,
only-
ma'am.
Frank,
Yes.
Frank, Frank.
As you know, I did meet with the assistant superintendent of curriculum for the Goshen School District about the Goshen Library taking over the library functions of the elementary and the intermediate schools. They thanked us for our interest
And sent in charge of the
and
door.
said that we'll attempt to settle our problems internally.
What does that mean?
That means
They're gonna
thank
do
you, but no
nothing?
thank you,
No,
don't
they're
let
gonna
the
try
It
to
door
get
means we wanna
aides and
protect our
assistants
turf and
to
stay the hell out of
Get
here.
into the
This is Jane?
library.
Yes.
Yes.
They also have.
I,
meeting
as a
issues
part of the
and-
conversation,
Yeah, really-
That I understand.
as
Right,
part
so
of the
it's not-
conversation, I offered a possibility, I offered to talk to her about the Goshen Public Library and Historical Society taking over entirely the library functions of the of all of the libraries in the school districts on a contract basis. And I had some preliminary talking to Matt about it, and although she decided she loved the idea of thinking out of the box, she didn't think it was anything that was worth pursuing at the moment. So I'm just reporting back that
Okay.
I did as I
Good.
promised, I got nowhere. I'm not
You
finished.
extended
I mean,
a-
personally, I think it was a great idea for us to
I do.
take over the library. But anyway,
Yes.
one of the interesting things that came up in the conversation is that Mr. Zunjan stated that BOCES, that is currently renting the top 2 floors of the Main Street School, has notified the school district that they probably will not renew their lease. And the indications are, we're gonna get everybody upset with this one, that involved in local politics. They're considering buying Arden Hill. Having said that,
BOCES?
BOCES,
Where'd they get that kind of
Makes
money, I
sense.
wonder?
Yeah, that's
from us,
actually-
State probably too.
from us.
But that's
They
actually.
get a lot of.
But
money.
having
They
said
rent
that,
That's a lot of
space.
rent, that's a shame.
But they
The
rent
school
a lot of
district's gonna
space.
lose a lot.
It could be if they stop renting space,
Then
it's
they
cheaper
have
to
the-
buy that building.
Yeah, cause the school
Probably is.
district does nice with their rents.
having said that, Ms. Zunjan did state that the ground floor of the Main Street School was available to the Goshen Public Library and Historical Society.
So they would
She
go-
mentioned that they would move to the 3rd floor. She mentioned in the possibility of in the probability of BOCES moving out. the Goshen Public Library might be interested in the first and second floors. I'm just mentioning
Is that
it, we
the-
did not follow it up because there's nothing to follow up at the moment.
Yeah.
Is she doing it as
Actually,
an
that
annex?
conversation brought me into the thought of why don't we contract for the libraries? We could put our library down there, have them bus the kids in little schools there, turn the libraries in those two schools into classrooms. I'm sorry, I missed one important point. She insisted that if we were interested in the property, that we would have to give them an out because in case there was some massive increase in need for classroom space, they'd need to have it back if there was an explosion of population and
Yeah, that's not good.
and
Yeah,
go
yeah.
the same thing that they've been looking for the last
And there
40
will be an
years
explosion,
as
it's
long as
inevitable.
I've been living here.
Right,
But,
I believe
Yeah.
that, I believe that that option has been explored in the past, and I will get you some more information, if you'd like, or I can put you in touch with the person who was at the helm at the time. And there was discussion of swapping buildings, and the library moving over there, and the district offices moving into this building, and they had an architectural firm look at it, and they said that it did not pass muster for a library.
It's not sturdy enough, yeah.
So it's
That
been
was,
looked at in the past of swapping.
Is
You remember?
asbestos
You remember?
in there too?
It's
And the
been
floors.
discussed.
but they were talking about moving up to the third floor.
I know it was, that's not the
But
point. The
it's-
point is that it was more than that. The first floor was just about okay.
Yeah.
First floor
And that
is
was
a
it.
p-
But
is
then
a
what happens
slab.
in 5
Right,
years when
but
they
that-
say goodbye, we
Right,
need room
and
now?
they say
I mean,
goodbye
then
and
what?
they, right,
Yeah.
you can't.
Then we're
But
dead.
it has been
Well-
explored in the past.
It
And
has,
if you'd
it
like,
was one of the things
We'd be
that
better off
was
staying
looked
here
into.
than going there.
And they had an actual architect come and do the
Kick it out.
study
Right,
to
and
see
he said
whether or
no way.
not
But
it would.
and the killer was they couldn't move in here.
No, we couldn't move over
We
there
couldn't move over there, that building
because
was
the
inadequate
would
for our
not,
needs.
the weight would not hold stacks, because stacks need a
Mhm.
particular.
But 250 pounds per square inch
Would-
is
if
supposedly,
that's a.
and somehow or other, I suspect very strongly that that 250 pound per square inch for stack number is a pre-ADA number that does not mean 4.5 foot high stacks.
I think we should.
I really believe that,
Well,
but
it
But
was
be
sort
that
of
as
the
that may,
experiment
wonder if they
directed
say
at
in
us.
5 years, sorry, we need 10 more
Right,
classrooms.
that's
Now we have to
kind
put
of-
our stuff out and have a big ass
Right, it
book
won't
sale, and we have no library.
Right, we'd have no library, we can't.
So I mean, that's
go
a
from owning
crazy.
a
Put up a
building-
tent in the Salesian and that's,
Yeah.
here's a
We'll buy
library.
a trailer and park it in their parking lot.
We'll bring like the blood bookmobile or
There
whatever,
you
we'll
go,
collect
there you
one
go.
and, yeah,
Well,
no.
well, you
But there
know
you
it's
go.
not going to happen in 5 years.
No, it's,
The
but
population
it'll
explosion.
happen.
Well,
You
once the
never know.
economy turns around and people start building again and they come to
It's going to be a
Goshen,
little
those
bit more than
houses,
5
you know,
years.
well,
for that.
still, I mean, we're trying to build a library for the next 100 years like this one, so even if it's 10 or 15 and they kick us out and
Then where do we
Quattrini's
go?
gone and the land's gone, then we
Where
have
do we
absolutely
go?
no place to go.
Right,
And it'll be 3 times what it was in 15, 20 years, so,
that's right.
yes.
Two things. Does the Altori landfill reassessment
No,
affect
Affect
us?
us,
No.
just the school
Thank you.
district.
No, just.
the
I
school
heard-
district does not take back from the library any of the tax and tories that they pay out by law.
But it could affect us to the extent that the community that is our taxing base is gonna take a hit,
Sure.
and they may be less inclined to support a tax increase for the library, a budget increase, or a new building.
Yeah.
That was just one thing I thought I'd ask, but the second is I heard through a middleman from Ray Quattrini that the window of opportunity is getting smaller, that he has somebody possibly interested in.
It's called foreclosure. Mr. Foreclosure.
Really?
Huh?
Yeah, I haven't heard that from my.
I didn't hear that.
I heard
Did
that
you hear
it
it
was
from
Mr.
Guy?
Foreclosure.
No, I heard it from Kyle.
Oh. Yeah.
He
Ray-
told
Ray
Kyle
told
to
me.
pass it along.
Ray
Yeah.
told me directly that he's negotiating with somebody about the building.
Which, you know, you got to look at from both perspectives. Are we investing, the Citizens Advisory Group, our time, you know, our plans, our future, in something that, you know, there's a chance that even if we get all our ducks lined up, even if, you know, we even spend money, he's gonna sell it to somebody else.
He's not
Well,
gonna
we
sit
would-
there, you can't expect him
Right.
just to sit there and wait for us, because we may eventually say no.
Right.
It's really unfair to him.
But-
He's been extremely accommodating.
That's true,
And I
but
think we have to decide based upon, well, for example, we're gonna get a report from Jeff in just a second, whether it's worth pursuing or not. And if we spend a little money in pursuing it and it turns out someone else buys it, well, we gave it our best shot.
We're not gonna get into a big
And I
one,
think
we
what we
don't
can
know.
do is if it's decided here, certainly with the report that we're gonna, I guess that's gonna be pivotal in that.
yeah.
If we decide we're going to go for it, we're gonna go for it this spring anyhow. We can start going to Quadrini and negotiating a price that we know we have to go for.
Well, but
And
is there any commitment? You know,
well, the worst is the worst. If we get a price that makes sense to us, and we think it makes sense to our constituents, we can come up with a $10,000 deposit and out
can
depending
we do
on
that?
it.
Is that something that
probably-
can be discussed with
Without
Ray?
having, without having
Dep-
an outside engineer or architect look at the
And we're gonna
building,
have to
or
do that.
have to do that
We're gonna have
first?
to, that's
Oh
right.
yeah, we're gonna have
Before
to
we
do
make
that.
any,
Yeah, that's gonna be an expenditure right there.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
you know, I hear it's gonna cost money, especially for the engineer to do that. Why would we do something like that if we're not gonna be able
But-
to get it?
But
Yeah,
we'll
but
have
it-
to
Can
buy
we
an
get a
option.
Can we have a commitment? Can it be discussed?
The
Can we
same way
discuss
that
this?
Healy gave
Absolutely.
Adams a 6-month option on
Right,
his
that's what we
place.
would
You
get
can usually
from,
purchase an option.
Excuse me?
Usually you can, or
He
sometimes
gave
you
it
can.
to them as part of
purchase
He
it.
gave it, alright, well, he
yeah,
must
well,
really
he's
have
right,
been
we could
desperate.
purchase an option,
Yeah.
there's a lot of things we could do.
Remember,
Purchase
we
an
need
option,
to
we
do
could have,
something.
there's some variety of a contingency contract. We're into this with you only if the vote passes. If
And
he
the
agrees to
engineer
it, we agree to
approval.
it. He can't do anything until we get a yay or nay vote from the public. And then we either move forward or he
But
puts
we
it back
can
in
do
the
it,
market.
but obviously
That's worth something
the
to him.
deadline
That would
is
probably
the
cost us
election.
money, I don't actually know.
I think
But
we
there
need
are-
to. I think we need to, which would include the president, who has stature. You do. Discuss with him. We do need to talk to him.
Well, we need to
Let's
hear
get our, let's get our report.
Understand,
You're getting ahead.
understand.
So, yeah, you're getting ahead of us, so.
And
why
I don't
we
want
move
us to
on?
rush into anything.
No, well,
Right,
you
and
know,
that's- Well, because
Nothing's
look
being
what
rushed
happened the last
into.
time the
It-
library did something like
I
that.
know.
And,
That's
and
my
we're not
fear is that
going
you
to,
guys are just,
Well, no matter what we
we
do, we're
talk
not,
to the Warwick engineer about that, I mean, there's just some, I just don't want
A
it
lot of
because
No, I
it
just
looks
don't
like a
want
right
it. Also don't
tree
wanna
and
be,
then the core is raw, and, you know, and, I mean, Robert Hubschner brought up a lot of good ideas last time, and really opened up, I wish more people were here to hear it, and things to think about, so I don't want rose-colored glasses
nobody
When
has
making
rose-colored
a
glasses
convenient-
on.
purchase, that's all.
no, and it's, we also don't wanna go in the other direction and be so afraid of pissing people off that we don't make any decision and then all the decisions get made for us because we were chicken,
Right.
so we don't wanna do
That
that
too,
either.
sure.
Anything
Second.
under unfinished business?
I think we're done.
Okay, Citizen Advisory Chair, Mr., is it Shannon?
Sorry for
Thank
taking
you.
so long.
Well, listen, I believe in short meetings, and we've already had a long meeting. But would it be all right with you if I piggyback a little bit on the discussion you had about planning, just very briefly, as briefly as I can?
Mm-hmm.
I've been involved, and in fact, have authored probably at least 6 different municipal master plans, and I'm just going to throw some information out to you. And these are just models. You can use all or part or none of them as you wish. One type of master plan, it's not mandatory, it's completely optional, and it certainly doesn't fit all occasions. There's a master plan that is formulated around what are called goals, targets, and strategies. So one type of master plan is a master plan that has a set of goals, targets, interim targets to be met in advancing towards the goal, and strategies. What kind of strategies are you going to use to meet the targets and eventually satisfy the goals? So that's one format, that's one structure that a master plan can take. Another just part of master plans usually include components that include, for example, physical plant, part of a master plan. Another one is the financial plan as part of the master plan. And the third part could be a technology master plan. Also, master plans are usually rolling master plans, so that you have let's say if you had a master plan on the table today, for the next 5 years, you would review it next year, and then this year's gone, and then add another year at the end of it, so it continues to roll. An editorial comment on my part is that I have a collection of VHS tapes, and when my VHS machine broke, I don't have anybody around who can fix it because everything's now on DVD. So my own speculation is that at this moment in our history, just as in movies on tape at home for home entertainment and also music, I have a collection of cassette tapes that I can't listen to anymore. I think that we're in a period of transition, so that at least for the foreseeable immediate future, you're going to have more than one kind of medium to service dinosaurs like me who like to hold books but also have to appeal to younger people who don't care about printed materials anymore. This could be a component, by the way, of your master plan. How to cater to the current needs of the diverse tastes of our community and yet have a plan measurable by some kind of device, such as differing demands of usage over a period of time, so you can transition from your current situation where you have to have more than one kind of medium and gradually advance and progress to other kinds of mediums. These are just quick thoughts off the top of my head. They can all be fleshed out. It's my experience and it's my observation that groups like this and also local municipal governments metaphorically resemble the gaseous state of matter, and that is that you automatically assume the shape and the volume of the container that you build. Now there's a finite number of hours that are available in which to do the work and a finite number of people to do the work. So it's wonderful to create a massive container, but you don't want to create such a massive container that you exceed your capacity to do the work. So necessarily you have to discipline yourself and confine yourself to something that's feasible and practical. But nevertheless, just again, thank you for allowing me to share with you some of the possible structures and some of the possible components of the kind of a master plan or different sub-master plans that you can have. For example, another component hypothetically could be, just to give you an example, no less frequently than every 3 years the board will review and amend as needed its bylaws. You could have as part of your goal or plan, if you have one or if you don't already have one, a handbook with our various policies in it. For example, our policy against sexual harassment, our policy protecting civil rights, our computer use policy, our vehicle use policy, our procedures with respect to submitting vouchers and getting bills paid, our bidding policy for contracts that we put out, and so forth and so on and so forth and so on. So you can have different components and all of these things can be listed, and then as I say, it's a rolling master plan that's periodically reviewed. It's really a very, very helpful tool in my experience. So thank you for allowing me to piggyback on the prior discussion. I'll be glad to share whatever other experiences I have with you at your request. It's a very valuable thing to do, to consult not only plans that other libraries may already have adopted and whatever model plans might be out there from regional library systems, but also to look at municipal master plans, which are available for free, and just see what kind of components they have and how they were adopted, and use those procedures as a model, even though the subject matter may differ. All right, all that having been said, I have 7 copies, not realizing ahead of time, as I should have, that there are 9 members of the board, so 4 of you can share 2 of these, and the other 5 of you can have your own individuals. This packet consists of my typewritten summary, which is the first and second pages. The third page are the names and email addresses of the people who participated in this committee. The fourth and fifth page are my handwritten notes that I took at our meeting, so you can criticize the summary on the first two pages if you think it doesn't accurately resemble the handwritten notes that I took at the meeting. And the last two pages are an email that I sent out prior to the meeting. I believe that's dated October 12th, which are my own comments and ideas that I wanted to send out ahead of time so people would have a chance to read them and respond to them at the meeting. As I said about the physical state of gaseous matter, anything can take the shape and quantity of the container that's created to hold it. So again, believing in the appropriateness of short meetings, I tried to keep it short but not omit any important items. Just very briefly, if there are a couple things I can emphasize, based not only on the meeting of the advisory committee, but also again on my past experience with capital projects, more numerous than I care to remember. There are a couple of things that are very, very important in my experience, and here they are. And this is in no particular order, so don't think that by throwing these items out at you I'm prioritizing. I am not. This is not in any particular order. One thing that's always very, very important is parking. Like it or not, people are concerned with parking. And that is directly related to another issue which has always been, in my experience, very, very important. And that is both the actual impact and the perceived impact on the neighbors. Now, just with respect to the Quattrini building, but applicable to any other site and any other facility, is what I think is a very, very important goal, target, and strategy, if you will. And that is to have a very, very direct and clear line of communication with the neighbors. In the case, for example, only as an example of the Quattrini building, if it were up to me, and it's not, but if it were up to me, I would make sure that the following people were kept apprised of what was going on and periodically consulted for their feedback, in no particular order. The police station, the fire station, the post office, the senior citizen center, the line of businesses next to the parking lot, in other words, Kennett's and Elsie's and all those places, the people who live on those residential streets up the hill, the strip mall across the street. Very, very important for the neighbors to know that they are very important in the conceptualization of the proposal. Number one. Number two, very, very important to affirmatively reach out and include in your conversations the people who have, and I don't consider this word to be a negative word, I think it's a very positive word, the people who have a political interest in what's going on. The village board, the town board, the school board, the agencies, the municipal agencies, any other not-for-profit groups, maybe an environmental group, maybe a community-based organization. Make sure that those people know that they're not omitted. And that's important not only for the merit of including them, but also because it helps protect your public relations status. And that's also very, very important. Sometimes with projects of this sort, perception becomes reality. And you always want to be proactive in protecting how you're perceived. Another important factor, and this was very, very consistent in the contributions of opinions that I received, both electronically and at the meeting, is that, and you're aware of this, I'm not telling you anything you don't already know, and that is that people were very, and will remain, no doubt, very, very concerned that you are being frugal and protective of the public purse. Specifically what that means is that if the Salesian property is not going to be used, people want to see the value of that property liquidated as best as you can to offset the remaining costs that may be imposed on the taxpayer. So that's a very specific recommendation that many people made. I could go on. As I said, I believe in keeping meetings as short as possible, having been a public employee for so many years and attended more meetings than I want to recall. So these are a very, very quick verbal summary of what I've tried to summarize in writing. I'll be glad to answer any questions that you might have, and I'll be glad to give you any more advice or any more help that I can in any way.
What did the board think about the walkthrough?
They thought that the walkthrough was an appropriate and necessary opportunity, and several people said that either they couldn't attend the first time or wanted to do it again, and they thought that another or further scheduling of additional walkthroughs would be appropriate. I will just again give you a metaphor from the real estate business. That is, if you're in the market to purchase a house, the trite expression is the first time you walk through a house that you're thinking of buying, you love it, and the second time you walk through it, you see everything you don't like. So multiple visits are appropriate from a real estate perspective.
What did they think about the renter that's there for a long time?
Several different possibilities, several different ideas. One is that there were those who thought that the fact that there was a renter there might be a good way to offset the cost, because if the library acquired the building and didn't need that space for library purposes, then it would be a way to generate income either from that renter or some future renter. Others thought that the building itself as presented wasn't sufficient or adequate, and that we would, this board should negotiate with Mr. Quattrini to get the renter out of there. But that's a question, in my opinion, of balancing different things. One is the spatial needs of the library, another one is the need of the library to balance its budget, another one is to have the managerial discretion whether or not to rent the space to generate income, hold it in reserve, or make other use of it. So there was a lot of concern about the space that currently is being rented, but the response as to what the best strategy is with respect to that space differed.
Does the Community Advisory Board think that the Q building will pass a referendum in April?
The only way I can answer that question, and again, you have to understand that what I'm telling you now is a summary of everybody's comments, so each individual comment is as different as each individual. The way that I would answer your question, if I could unfairly truncate and summarize the comments, was that the referendum would have a much better chance of passing if the public were given assurance that the money to be gained by liquidating Salesian or other assets that the library is not going to use would be presented to the public as something which is conservative of the public purse. In other words, if the public has confidence that the money is not being used in spendthrift fashion, then the referendum would have a good chance. If that confidence was lacking, then the referendum would not be looked at so favorably. In other words, the financial aspect was deemed by everybody, no matter what the difference in their individual opinion might be. I think there was a consensus that as far as the referendum is concerned, the finances were a central issue to the referendum. More than space, more than location, more than parking, the referendum. One other thing I'll throw in here, again, more from me personally than the committee as a whole, is that among the important research, two aspects of your research and preparation that are very important. One is the engineering data, which you've already mentioned, and then the other, and Mr. Mays, by the way, was very forthcoming and helpful in offering his services as to that respect. And the other thing from me is, and this is also part, it's all connected, this is also part of your ongoing positive, proactive relationship with the municipalities involved, and that is to make sure ahead of time that you're going to satisfy, even if it's not mandated, but proactively and voluntarily, you're going to conform as closely as you can to the prevailing theme and the prevailing public policies underlying your local planning and zoning ordinances. Parking has a lot to do with that. Certainly, there's no question that building safety, access of emergency vehicles, environmental considerations such as separate stormwater sewer systems and proper drainage and proper foliage and screening and all the rest of those concerns, which, by the way, have been now mandated and must be incorporated in the activity of municipal planning and zoning boards. And municipal governments have had in the last few years to modify their zoning ordinances to incorporate these new mandates. And whether there are issues or not with respect to any given particular site, my recommendation is that you want to be aware of these things and proactive with respect to these things. Again, number one, because it's the right thing to do, and second of all, because you're demonstrating to all the other entities that are involved in this in one way or another that you're aware of it, that you're sensitive to those needs, and that it's really a partnership with the community. Sense of goodness.
So to go about doing that, I just send a letter to all these agencies. For example, if my neighbor is going to build a porch, I always get a letter saying, so-and-so, please come to a public hearing. So is that something that that's how we would go about doing that?
The way that I have seen it done by the municipalities for whom I have been employed and with which I have been involved in the development of capital projects has been as follows. One, we go to this is public information, we go to in my case it was easy because I had the resources of the local municipal government at my disposal, meaning I had the code enforcement officer, I had the assessor, I had the tax records. And by the way, even though this is a library board and not a municipal board, these are public records. And by taking the posture of being affirmative in cooperation with the local municipalities, you should, by any rational basis whatsoever, receive their complete cooperation. It's in their interest to cooperate with you just as much as it's in yours to cooperate with them. So the way we did this, at least in my experience, with several different capital projects. By the way, what were those capital projects? 2 new courthouses, new jail, a new local correctional facility, complete rehabilitation and reuse of a residential healthcare facility, reestablishment of a cemetery, plenty of them, believe me. The way we did it is as follows. First of all, we got lists of the names and addresses of all the neighbors. You draw a circle. The circle we drew for one particular project that I remember was 1/4 mile. So you take a map, you use a compass, you draw a 1/4 mile circle, get everybody's name and address, and send them a letter. That's one way to do it. Copy on the letter all the members of the village board and all the members of the town board. Ask that the letter, if you have omitted somebody from the mailing list, be copied and sent to that person. Have a way of publicizing your outreach, either, no, I shouldn't say either, including on a website, in a newsletter, if you send out a hard copy newsletter, the newspapers, other forms of media. Again, at this stage, I can't emphasize strongly enough that communication is the key. It really is, because it shows that you're open and above board. The corny expression that I hate is transparency. But you are. It's true. There's merit to it. And it really protects, as to the greatest extent possible. This is a democracy. God bless us all. And thank goodness there's always going to be dissent. There are always going to be opponents, no matter what. You can't please everybody, and it's good that we live in a healthy society that allows that. But you want to at least be able to say that you were as open and as forthcoming and as informative as you could possibly be. As long as you do that, you've done the best job you can to protect your perception and your public relations, and that's key. The one thing that you can't get back once it's lost is credibility. And maintaining that transparency is the best way to maintain your credibility. So you send out a letter to the neighbors, you copy the elected officials, you copy the involved agencies and the media, and the other people who are of interest, including the people who are interested enough to participate on the committee, whatever other membership lists you may have, and that's how you start. Give them contact information, names, email addresses, U.S. postal addresses, so that they can communicate with you, they can ask questions. Again, there's only so many hours, there's only so many people to do a lot of work. But in making this commitment, not only are you advancing your own foundation to bring the project eventually to fruition, but you're also benefiting yourself because you're giving yourself a means of feedback. You're going to find out what's important to the public, which will help you posture yourself with respect to a referendum. You can be much more responsive to people's concerns and maintain that credibility, which is, in my view, so essential. So for all those really good reasons, it's really a good idea to be proactive all through the process with respect to your communication. Yes, sir.
Before, when you said that there was a better chance of passing a purchase
A referendum
for the building.
if the financial component is central to that.
My estimate is that the net cost of moving into that building is $5 million.
Moving in or acquiring it?
The net cost, that is acquiring and build out
And the cost
and
of
then-
physically moving?
and no, less. The cost less the sale of this building and the sale of the Salesian property, the net is $5 million.
Right, but including, however, the cost of physically moving your assets
Yes.
from one place
Yes.
to another?
Yes.
Yeah.
I'm figuring out $5 million for my own purposes.
Okay, good round number.
That's an 18.7% increase alone to service that debt in today's interest rates markets. 18.7% budget increase just to service the debt. No increased operating costs, no increased costs of plowing a larger parking lot.
The best response I
How
can...
will they feel about that? Do you consider those people
I-
who
I respectfully decline to tell you how the public will feel about anything. Having worked in municipal government for 25 years, I could say that my record predicting how the public will feel about things is poor. But-
we asked you to advise us?
But, however, that being said, I will go back to the beginning of the conversation, and I will tell you that one of the most useful, if not the most useful, aspects of developing a rolling short-term and long-term plan is it gives you a highly credible basis for comparing an estimated hard cost, such as the one that you have just recited, to the cost of a different alternative. And many times, and again, you can be intellectually honest about it. You don't have to be propagandizing. You can be intellectually honest in showing that in the long run, the cost of taking no action or the cost of some other option is greater than the cost of what's being proposed as a practical matter before you now. So, or alternatively, and again, you know, we're all being honest here, maybe by developing that kind of data and those kinds of hard and reliable projections, you realize, hey, you know what, I learned something. Maybe this isn't the best option. Maybe there is another one. But either way, you'll have a credible argument to present. And that will be the basis of maintaining that credibility. That's one of the most important, you know, the thing about municipal government that I learned is this. Yeah, the dollars are important. Yeah, the unfortunate result, and I'm not characterizing, the unfortunate result of the Turi litigation is going to be a hit to the taxpayers. But what I've learned, based on my experience, is that it's not just the actual cost. It's the fact that that cost was unplanned. And the thing that's so important about finance. And I ask you not to look at my checkbook because that'll undermine my credibility. But the thing that's so important about financial planning is not just the dollar numbers, it's the timing of it. I used to negotiate settlements in lawsuits, and I used to say this almost every time, and we're talking about big buck settlement lawsuits, hundreds of thousands of dollars, in one case a couple $1 million. It was a class action. And I used to go into the negotiation, I used to say, I can probably get my governing body to agree to almost any reasonable number that you want to put on the table, as long as you do one thing for me, as long as you give me a long enough time to pay it out. And the reason why that was true is because depending on the number, and depending on how much time I was given by the other side, I could finance it. I could bond it. I could borrow it. I could work so much of it into my annual budget and know ahead of time, and what you said is correct, know ahead of time what we could project with reliability the impact that would have on the tax rate year to year to year to year. I would also be able then to gain insight about whether or not it would be more beneficial to me to front end load it, to back end load it, time it so that I know in the future I'm going to have a source of income that I don't have now, because that building that's now costing me so much money is going to become obsolete, and I'm going to sell it and put it back on the tax rolls, and I can offset it that way. The point is that sometimes, just as important as the raw dollar number is your timing. And if you can coordinate your timing with your projected cost, anything's possible. That's one of the most important values to be derived from having a plan.
But I'll tell you, if there's a local government who didn't anticipate losing money in a Tory suit, they were irresponsible.
Cheers.
That's an entirely different topic. I'll be glad to talk about it with you at some other time, but I want to preserve your time at this meeting tonight.
When your group walked through the building and they were looking at the parking lot, something came up that I hadn't even thought about. People that park here use the library, and if they want to go to the pharmacy, if they want to go to Linda's or Howell's, they get in their car and they drive over. That parking lot is so convenient to all the stores and to Kenneth, which those people are always looking for parking, that I'm afraid people are there's no meters, and even if there were meters, they're going to pull in there, drop a book off, and go to town.
It's a very good point. It was discussed at the committee meeting, and also I got a lot of comments about that electronically. And it's it's two sides of the same coin. It's a blessing and a curse. There's nothing in this life that's unalloyed. The central location was very, very attractive to a lot of people, and that relates to the fact that the parking might be used for people for other purposes. Now, two sides of the same coin. Some of the local businesses might love it that you've chosen a location within walking distance of their store. There's a variety now of restaurants there. People are going to find that very convenient. But you are going to have displacement. You're going to have people displacing parking for library users because they're there for other purposes, which emphasizes the importance of coordination with the village board, because they have the power to adopt ordinances, and the village police department has the legal authority to enforce ordinances. And one of the things we did at one of the local municipalities where I worked, to be specific, City of Newburgh, we had to revise some of our local parking regulations, literally, not just from block to block, but within the block. For example, for some of the business, when we reestablished the Cross Hudson Ferry, which was to serve the commuters, what happened was a lot of the people who were commuting to New York City, they would, from west of the Hudson, would park their car on the Newburgh City streets, take the ferry, cross the Beacon, take the train down to Manhattan, come back at 8 at night. Well, that parking spot was occupied by their car Monday through Friday from 8 in the morning to 8 in the evening. You can imagine that the local store owners weren't happy with that because their customers had no place to park. So we refined the parking ordinances, number one, to create 15-minute parking spaces for people who could run in and out of the wine store in Newburgh, just as we have here in the village of Goshen. We also changed some of the parking regulations in order to make sure that the ferry parkers parked in the ferry parking lot, for which the taxpayers were paying a hefty sum, and not using the city streets. But what about the store owners? They also want to park their car on the city street pretty close to their stores and leave their car all day because they want to be there from morning to night while they were the proprietors of their stores. So how do you make a distinction between the people who are there for local businesses and the people who are commuters who are not going to be there all day because they're in New York City? You have to work closely with the municipality, with the police department, public works, and the elected officials to refine the local ordinance sufficiently so that you are not displaced by other local uses. There are ways of doing it. It's not perfect. It's not perfect. A very, very, very brief digression. The reason it's not perfect is because there's a law of the state of New York. And the law of the state of New York is that when it comes to parking, the municipality is merely a trustee. Even though the village may own the streets and the sidewalks, they don't own it as a proprietor. They own it as a trustee for the public. So they can create a handicap parking space in front of my house, but they are not allowed to create Jeffrey's handicap parking space in front of my house. They can create a handicap parking space there, but whoever has a handicap parking permit can park there. It's not just for a person. Same way as any other parking spot in the village. They can designate that as a certain parking zone, but it's open first come, first served to whoever's eligible to park there. So there's a refinement that can be accomplished, but it's limited in its scope because you have to maintain this idea that the village is the trustee for the public when it comes to parking. But there are ways to come as close as you can to your goal without reaching the finish line, and those are very important aspects to be determined when you identify a particular space to be the candidate for the new library.
Well, we also have a parking lot, a public parking lot, right behind the library. It's used by Kent's, used by Elsie's, any number of those businesses, where people might start at that location and then walk over to the library.
Yeah.
So you got both, and you have 100 and whatever extra parking spaces in the public area. And I think, just thinking,
the solution, which is completely ideal in the abstract and probably completely impractical in real life, both for financial and other reasons, is to acquire your own parking lot which you can control. In the absence of that opportunity and that affordability,
we can do that.
Well,
Sure.
if that's possible,
One
that's the
entrance,
ideal
one
solution.
gate,
But if it's
permit
not
ticket.
possible, then you have to
Yeah.
cooperate with the municipal authority.
It would be something that we might move to if it is deemed necessary. Sorry, I know you had your hand up.
I have a question. How many people are still hung up on the Salesian property, the building on the Salesian property?
I will say
That's
to
what
you,
I
and I'm
see.
not,
I think I know who they are.
I'm not quibbling with your words. I'm not
Right.
quibbling with your terminology. I'm very, very happy to report that the conversation certainly was not of one unanimous opinion. There were vigorous and healthy disagreements,
Right.
but it was consistently throughout a cooperative conversation. Those who agreed and those who disagreed, nevertheless, it was a very, very cooperative conversation. The comments regarding Salesian fall into two major categories. The first category which was a very significant and large category of people, were those who said, if you're not going to use the Salesian property, liquidate its value and offset the cost of the new facility. The second, very well articulated, very well presented, were those who thought that Salesian was still a viable option and didn't want it to be abandoned as an option.
And that
But my
sort of
concern-
amphitheater, no?
Yeah,
That's a reason.
well, one of the reasons.
Yeah, but I wanted to know what the fallout of it was. Was it a 1
What's
to
the
5.
net worth?
Yeah, I mean, do you have 5 people who think we should liquidate it for every 1 person who thought we should build a monstrous library?
I think
Or
that's
did you have
probably a fair estimate
a
of the
5 to 1
balance,
kind of,
but
right.
understand that this is a very small sample.
I understand.
And those who were in favor of using it and not liquidating it were for the reason that they thought that because there was more space, it could be used more easily for larger programs. Larger group programs, more, for example, hypothetically, if you wanted to establish some sort of a theater or an amphitheater or other more widely spaced uses, then Salesian had much more of a practical usage potential than the building. But it was a very healthy debate. I only regret that my report to you was based on what I perceive to be a relatively small sample. Which is not to say that even though the sample is small, it's not representative. It could be representative, but it's nevertheless a small sample. Yes, ma'am?
In your professional opinion, our timeline, do you think April is rushing it with all the reports that are due and the letters that need to be sent out?
I think I'm of two minds. I think that April isn't rushing it because when you go, in my experience, when you go into what by any account has to be considered a major project, rushing it is bad. But on the other hand, you're also dealing, at least with respect to the Quattrini building, with a privately owned piece of property. And I agree with some of the comments I heard earlier here tonight. You know, and we're not best friends. We don't socialize together. We see each other at community events. But I'm very glad to say that I think I have a very good rapport and a good relationship with Ray Quattrini. In my experience, he's a very, very community-minded and community-spirited gentleman. Certainly very generous in ways that I'm familiar with. Nevertheless, in his defense, not that he needs me at my defense, but in his defense, he's a businessman, just like the rest of us. We have to make ends meet. He built the building. It's been on the market, as far as I'm aware, for at least a couple of years. And if somebody came along and made him a reasonable offer, especially in this real estate market, I would be the last person to blame him for taking advantage of that offer. As far as the discussion you had about trying to negotiate a lease with an option to buy, that's a very viable and that's a very good strategy to use when you're contemplating a real estate transaction. But as in any transaction, it takes two to agree. You've got to make that attractive enough to the building's owner for him to think that that's worthwhile, which means you've got to give him consideration from your end. So it's a very, very appropriate approach. It's certainly, in my opinion, worthwhile to keep those lines of communication open and keep the discussion active for no other reason than perhaps you're at least keeping your options open. And that's also very appealing to people who want to judge you on the responsibility you're showing in advancing this project. But understand that the time frame that may result is something that's somewhat beyond your unilateral control. By the way, another digression footnote, but addressing an issue that you mentioned earlier. Unfortunately, despite the best of intentions and despite the most conscientious efforts to have a plan, heaven forbid, should there one day be some sort of unanticipated calamity that required you to have some radically new facility in an incredibly short period of time. And thankfully in my career, that's only happened to me twice. The remedy that we used both times, not the most preferable situation, but it worked to address the emergency on both occasions, one of which, by the way, was the county jail, was that you acquire very, very cheaply what are called modulars, which are basically nothing more than trailers. And when you use that as a result of a calamity, very often you're given a grace period so that you can kind of finesse, at least temporarily. Another advantage of having a plan, you can say, I have a long-term plan, so give me a grace period here. And you incorporate the modulars as your temporary facility. And that's usually the cheapest and quickest way of addressing an unexpected calamity that reduces your time frame to nothingness. I'm just sharing that with you because you mentioned it earlier, and that was my experience, and that got us through a bad time. There may be other devices, but I don't know of any. But that's a digression just to address that earlier comment.
So I guess you really can't say the advisory committee is saying go ahead or with that building, or the advisory committee is saying don't go ahead.
Here's what they're saying. They're saying continue to explore it. It sounds, again, the majority say it sounds like the best option you've got, so preserve it as an option as best as you can. And I would say that a majority...
We've been doing that for 2 years.
But I would say, more specifically, perhaps more helpful to you, I would say a majority was of the opinion that if that means you have to spend $10,000 more or less on getting more engineering data, then it's worth it, because that preserving that option justifies that expense. Again, it's not a unanimous consensus, but it would be the majority consensus. The plan and the option generally was viewed favorably, and if you have to expend some money now to preserve it as an option, do it. The other side of that, which is not to contradict it, is that with respect to expending that money to keep the option open, and with respect to the project as a whole, if the library is possessed of assets that are not going to be used, liquidate them at the greatest price to offset the cost.
Thank you.
Will you be meeting again, or is this it?
Thank you. Last comment I'll make, and again, I'm available to answer anybody's questions and contribute if I can. And that is that after our meeting, I didn't get a lot, but electronically I got a few communications from people who wanted to know when the next meeting was. And my response is that we don't have another meeting scheduled, but if either this board or members of the group wanted to have another meeting strongly enough, I'd be glad to do so. What that means to me, and what I want to share with you is, and this is where I started my comments, is that there is a strong feeling among all those who are interested, and God bless us all that there are people who are interested. That's what makes our democracy work. So I'm sharing with you the idea that these open lines of communication and to cultivate this very, very healthy interest that people have, I suggest respectfully that this board should be aware that you should provide people with that opportunity, because they want to continue to be able to share their opinions and their input with you, which, by the way, is a very, very central and important responsibility of policy-making bodies of elected officials.
Our meetings are always open.
I think that people sometimes, and this is not a criticism, it's just an observation, I think people sometimes appreciate a little bit of being catered to. So if somebody says, I want to be able to share my opinion, you want to let them know that that's welcome.
You have 17,000.
And which is why, by the way, I provided you with the names and email addresses of everyone who attended.
You have 17,000 people that we should be catering to equally.
Well, then the best way, in my opinion, of doing that is to circulate as much as you can electronically, because it's inexpensive. You don't have to spend $9,000 on postage. You can do it electronically. And when people ask, well, I have an opinion, I wasn't given the outlet to share it, you say, yes, you were.
We also, in the newsletter, invited those 17,000 people to join the advisory committee. They had this document in their home. Now, they chose either not to read it or to read it and to say, I'm too busy.
I will leave you with the same.
So you're saying just cater to people who respond and don't.
I'm saying
no,
that if
no,
they
no.
say you've left me out, we can respond and say we tried to include you, but you didn't take that opportunity.
Right.
But there will be other opportunities.
Exactly. I will leave you with the same metaphor with which I began. The metaphor is to physical science. Matter in the state of a gas assumes the size and shape of the container that you create, and you must be ever mindful of not creating a container so large that you lack the hours and the manpower to do the work in the space that you've created. So you have to discipline yourself to limit that. But within those limits, it is always, in my experience, always the right idea to make a priority of partnering as much as you can with all the people who are interested, because again, the thing that you have going for you, which is more important to you than anything else, more important than the money, more important than the facility, more important than the plan, more important than anything, is your credibility. And by keeping that outreach and that posture open, it's the best thing you can do to maintain that credibility on which everything else is based.
Are you going to send the report that you gave us to the members of that committee? So that they know
I
what-
suppose I can, because
They
I
might be
did.
curious, they might be curious as to.
That's a very good idea, and since I have already shown you that I have their email addresses, then what I will do is I will send both. Now, I already sent the October 12th letter to everybody. I did that before we had our meeting, but I'll send that again along with my November 8th summary, at least to those people who gave me their names and email addresses. I will do that.
And then I guess, is it fair to say that we may at some point in the future be calling on this group and others that want to join this group if we need more feedback?
Absolutely.
Because you might let them know that this,
And we'll schedule another walkthrough.
That a lot of people wanted that. So if I can be of further help, just
Thank
let me
you.
know.
Thank you very
Thank you
much.
very
Thank you.
much. Thank you. Okay, so the first task is to get a walkthrough scheduled. The next task would be to call Paul Mays. Someone needs to get in touch to him and see in what capacity is he willing to offer his advice, help. We don't want to abuse his power, we don't want to scare him off, but it says here he's willing to help with his name and number, and he said that Paul's also willing to help. So I guess what we need to do is reach out to him and say, in what capacity can we ask you to help?
well, what he told me previously was that he would be willing to come down to do a study of the building to see what kinds of space utilization would work, and come up with some sort of a plan as to this is the best way to use the space that's there for a modern library. And he thought that would take about $5,000 to do something like that. And I think the thing to do is, I think Matt should be the contact person, because we don't really have a committee that's.
Right.
And I think Matt should contact him, again, find out what it is that he would do and what the cost would be.
And I wonder what an
And also the
engineering
timeframe.
review would be
Pardon me?
involved. Like, when we need an engineering review, I wonder if that is in lieu of that,
Well,
in
it-
addition
No.
to that?
It's
He
not
has
necessary.
engineers that work with his firm, so,
It was on, he even says so.
I don't know how much that would be,
Well,
but
then
we don't wanna
we'd have to
use
ask
Quattrini's engineers and people, we wanna go outside
Yeah.
of that.
right.
Because
We
open
want
his
people that we
engineering
hire
side.
that
I'm
are
thinking
answerable to
if the
us.
community advisory board is saying, go ahead and spend $10,000 on the next step, and the next step is to get an engineering review, if Paul is willing to combine his service with an engineer from his company, how much everything might be,
Right.
I don't know.
Right, so I think Matt needs to answer that question.
I just wanted to mention too, and the name eludes me, I had an architect stop by that was a former librarian, actually a academic librarian. Lives in Middletown. He was one of the runners-up for the Middletown Library, the Thrall Library, when it was redone. I only mention it because he said that the business about weight-bearing walls, weight-bearing floors, he said that he should be able to get for free. He said that by law has to be on the blueprints of the building.
Right,
Just to mention that, because I know we go around and around this business about what the
right,
weight
that's
bearing.
not a difficult thing.
Right. And I don't know if you,
I
you
had
know,
asked Paul about going, adding a floor, and he said, well, if you can see the plans, that Patrice got the
okay,
plans.
so right, he said, so this is
If
what
I
this
can see the
architect told me,
plans,
I
and
can
when
tell
I
you
walk
that.
around inside, the interior walls are not there, so the beams are all exposed.
Right.
And we can take some measurements and look at the plans, and I guess the strength of the steel is all.
Right.
Well, wasn't the main reason to get an engineer is to confirm that the floor can afford
That's what I
200
thought,
plus
that's why I
pounds?
mentioned
I don't know what's
But if it's
legally
public
involved.
knowledge within the as-bills, the floor plans, then
But
We
it's
don't
more,
have to
the
do
engineer,
anything.
the engineer has to
It's-
do more than that, that's not, that's only one, I think, of many questions.
I think the foundation, I think everything, it's like a home inspection, but amplified. And flood zones, which you know it's not, and this, that, and the
Right,
other
it's not
thing.
the thing. Yeah, there were a bunch of
So
questions in
that's
here
a
that
big
we
thing
really
to think
didn't
about.
answer.
I think
So-
the big thing also is I think you should talk to Ray, to let him know what we're doing. To just make sure that he's not locked in some buyer for this building, and we're gonna put our efforts, energies, time into something that's not gonna happen.
Yeah, I think
Which
before we
we
pull the
did
trigger
keep-
and,
I think knowing what our plans are, and from you and maybe President,
Principal?
would lend credence to or provide him enough assurance that we are deadly serious about this, instead of like I'm hearing stuff from him. Tell your father, that's not the way it should go. Okay.
And he's already
I think he
dealt
should have
with
dealt directly with us.
at least
by the
5
same
different
token.
people on this board,
He could have called you
or,
and
or
said,
Right, but
on
now it's
the
official
library
that we're
board.
going
I mean, really, we want it to be
True,
both
true.
ways.
We do want to both ways.
If we want to communicate directly with him, he has to communicate directly with whomever we assign to
well, we
be
need
our
a
go-to person.
contact person, and I think that should be Matt. I think Matt should be the one who speaks to him. And before we sign an agreement with Paul Mays to spend, wherever it is, $5,000 to $10,000, make
Just
sure
say how
that-
viable his other option is.
make sure Ray hasn't, got a schedule to close
Has a
it.
contract or verbal even, so right. Also, I think before that we spend money with Paul Mays, I think Matt needs to talk to all the department heads and find out what they need in their space in the library. So when Paul comes in to say, okay, it's a shelf, how many computers are you thinking here? How much space do you need for a meeting room for a children's room? If Matt has those department heads said, okay, we need this many tables, this, and this, then he can look at it, I think. If he knows what we need in our library, that's the mistake we made with Hoffman. He just told us what we need.
There are 2 configurations. One, the existing free space. And the other, the space we would get back if we were able to buy out the current tenant upstairs. That is an option.
Right.
It's an option even the Citizens Advisory Group has recommended. And you know what? What we got, if we can buy out these people upstairs, we got all of your offices already laid out.
Right, so that's we
those
can
are two
hold for
configurations.
office
At
space,
what
but,
cost?
right.
$500,000.
It's $500,000.
To buy
Is
him
everyone-
out.
Yes, because he has a contract and he has a lease.
Minimum,
He has
it's
a
because
lease
he
and
already
has,
supposedly has
right.
$500,000 invested in it.
Right, that's what he said.
And he's in control of the building from what I understand.
But
About
if
the
we spend
maintenance.
$500,000 to buy
He's
him
on
out,
maintenance.
we're getting his build out,
Right.
which we would have had
Well,
to
yes,
spend $500,000
right,
to
exactly.
build
We might have,
ourselves.
right.
Yes,
So
and
Right,
excellent
it's-
point.
it's
and
really
that's
not
the
that
other
we're
thing to
losing
consider.
$500,000 by buying him out.
Well, you're
If that's
assuming
what we
that
want, if it's
he
a
wants
build-out.
$500,000 for his budget.
Right, he didn't want
The
money.
thing is that he spent the $500,000 to move a business
Yeah.
as certain expenses that, and I'm gonna guess the guy's looking for $1 million to get out of this.
And it may be a
Do we
good
ever
deal
do
for
that?
us.
He's gonna have to go somewhere
Because it
else
may
and
be
start
cheaper
over
to
where
do
he's
that
using him.
and then have the other space
He hasn't
set up
always-
right from day
Right,
one.
everybody.
Good night.
Good night.
Rather than
Good night,
try to
Jay.
change it.
And then change it down the
You
line.
lucky dog, you.
Hope you guys get out before
Right.
midnight.
And who's to say he's not gonna
You lucky
take what
dog,
he's
you.
got in there?
You're right, it
Right,
might
the
not
walls
even
you
be.
can't-
It's not a cabinet yet.
I'll see you tomorrow.
We're putting the cart before the horse here. I think,
Exactly.
A little with
Oh,
that.
Yeah.
Just-
Yeah.
So first thing is to schedule a walkthrough with the CAB, because they want it, so let's give it to them. It's the
I
right thing
think
to
the
do.
first thing is that.
So
Well,
we need to get in touch
I'm
with
just
Ray.
wondering
I think the first
why-
thing is that Matt should call Ray tomorrow morning and make sure that we're still,
Yeah, I think the first thing
available
is
to
to
do-
call Ray,
call Ray
second thing
first
is to
thing in the
call
morning.
Paul.
Yes,
right, and if
That's
we
not
can
gonna,
still do this,
the
call Paul.
walkthrough is more of a courtesy
right,
for
Right.
people who missed it
right.
or
Right.
don't want a second. But it's not gonna change their report.
No, but I just want it scheduled so that these are just bullets or
But
points
can
that we're
we-
doing.
Can we do it the reverse, have Paul Mays come in, do his thing, and then schedule a walkthrough?
Yeah, I just wanna make sure it's scheduled. It doesn't matter when or
We
in
don't-
what order, I just wanna make sure that they know that an upcoming, walkthrough will be done for them again, since they've asked for
With
it.
a date to be determined.
Or we just wait till we get a date after he talks to Ray tomorrow. He could come back to Ellen and she can set up a date for the CAB tomorrow after he talks to Ray. So
For a
he's gonna
walkthrough?
talk to Ray, well, why not? Cause he's gonna talk to Ray and make sure that he's not in the lease and that we're still viable and that we're a big contender here and please don't put us
And
out.
can we
It's
ask if
gonna-
you put in a ballpark as to what it's
You know
gonna
what we need
cost?
to do is get an appraisal also. That's
Yeah.
huge, because
I've
six
been
point
saying
five
that
could be
all along.
crazy.
Is there,
Yeah.
can
Like
we
he
put
said,
a
he is a
deposit
businessman.
down? Is there something like that that we could
It's way,
do?
way too early. for
Yeah,
that.
I
Yeah.
think we
Way
need
too
to,
early for that.
we need to
I'd like
talk
to
to
see-
Ray and make sure we're still a candidate. Number two, let's get an appraisal, so we know what numbers we're really talking about, and so that we have our hats on
In
straight.
today's market.
Yes.
Cause the only
Um,
thing we know from Ray about cost is that his
What he
statement,
wants.
I have $4.5 million in this building.
that doesn't
That's-
Okay, but
work out.
everybody's taking a loss on their house, so I'm sorry,
Right.
but let's get an appraisal. You have
That's-
four and a
but
half
that's
in,
all
but
we
it's
know.
worth 3, so hello, let's work now. So what we need to do is get a walkthrough schedule, just to let them know that we're thinking about them, we love them, and we're going to do it. We've heard and we're going to respond. Matt needs to talk to Ray and say we're still a viable candidate, we've heard through the grapevine that you're talking to people, we wanna make sure what number, or we're still number one in that. Yes. We need to get an appraisal. Let's get a commercial appraisal in here immediately. I don't know how much
Well,
it
I'll
costs,
tell you,
let's think about it.
I think we should have Paul Mays look at it, because if Paul Mays comes back and says, you know something, that building's not gonna work as a library, then we don't wanna waste money on an
Okay,
appraisal.
so that'll be after the Paul
I
Mays.
think the Paul Mays is
So-
before the
so
appraisal.
Get Paul Mays
Ray,
to come.
then
Okay.
Paul, then an appraisal.
Right.
Yes.
Then, and then
But
the
the department
walkthrough.
heads
First,
first, so that
right, the
Paul knows
walkthrough,
what.
because
Well,
that
walkthrough
walk,
is
The
independent though.
walkthrough is
Okay.
a Ray, what weekend are you available, can you open
Yeah.
the doors and
Yeah.
we walk through for an hour?
Right.
That's
That's
really
That's
not as
simple.
complicated as all the
Doesn't cost
rest of these
anything and
things.
it's,
Yeah.
it can go in
And
parallel
it's
with
at
anything
Ray's
else.
convenience on some weekends,
But
Right.
if
warning
the
witnesses.
purpose of the walkthrough, although it's a courtesy, aren't those people that walk through going to come out and then have ideas? Aren't they gonna wanna then share them? And it almost sounds like
Yeah.
they've missed their opportunity because the report's already been given. We've been given, Citizen Advisory Committee, there were several options we were afraid of. We were afraid they would say, you guys are crazy. Well, they didn't say we're crazy. They didn't say do it because there's still too many question marks. They said this is worth exploring and spending a little bit of money on.
Right.
And so that's what we're doing. So if other members of that committee now go for a walkthrough and have additional ideas, what should they do with those ideas? Should they be emailed to Jeff or what? I just wanna, when they get
Well,
done, they're gonna.
we have a liaison between the
Yeah,
cab
they
and the
can
board,
email,
so
they can
Ellen
email
can
me or
report
they
back
can
to
email
us.
Jeff, and I think that's the
So
kind
why
of
don't we do
thing.
this? Have
Yeah.
them contact you
Okay,
after the walkthrough if they have additional thoughts.
additional thoughts,
Okay.
questions, concerns,
Okay.
and then either
Yeah.
Paul will have answers for them, we will already know answers for them, or we'll be like, wow, we never thought of that kind of a thing.
Right.
but,
Right,
but
because they
also,
may, if you don't do that, then they're gonna say, well, why am I doing a walkthrough?
Yeah, good point, excellent.
but also, their, some of their concerns, some of their questions might be answered with a report from Paul Mays
Well, there's
during the
concerns
walkthrough, and they can say, oh, okay, that's what I was thinking, thank you for answering it, from somebody other than us.
Yeah, there are
Okay.
concerns and questions that come up in this report here
Yes.
that are already taken care of.
Like,
Well, the flood
The
zone
flood
was the
plain.
first thing on the first thing I
Mhm.
thought of.
Yeah.
The fact that our plan had always been that we buy that building and sell everything else and put it back on the tax rolls. So that's kind of, they're hung up on something that we've already committed to doing, and we haven't made that abundantly clear. So, I mean, there's things like that that I think will probably, you know, if we have Paul look at this first and then have the walkthrough, we would have ready answers for them at the time that they.
I asked Ray about the third floor and the 40-foot, that's the maximum height of a building. And he said that the planning board had already given approval for a higher than 40-foot building
Oh, okay,
on a lot that's there on
that's all in
West
writing.
Main.
excellent.
Wait, for his, no,
On
No,
West
for
Main.
another building,
not for his building.
not for his, but for someone else that wants to build a building in the village.
I mean, the other question I would
Very
have for,
nearby.
Build an amphitheater up there.
There you go. I think we just dropped a big sheet on the back of the building. It's in the parking lot.
we're on,
Come on, it's
It's-
almost 10 o'clock. I get punchy. I'm sorry. Put up with it. You were saying?
I'm gonna lose my train of thought.
Oh, jeez.
Is to, you know, if in some future we need to build a third floor, you know, do we need to shut down? What needs to happen to the library in order for that third floor to go up? That would be a question I would like. You know, I have heard from other people that when you add a floor, you have to shut down operations in the bottom floor.
It can be a nightmare, I've heard.
Yeah.
But it's a nightmare where it's 25 years away.
It's not our nightmare.
We don't know, we don't know that,
No,
we don't
I
know
think
that.
we pretty much.
You know, that
But it
magic
may-
bubble could come back from the 1990s and all
You're
of a sudden.
dreaming,
No.
you obviously have
That
roots
really
in the
is-
school
that's really
district,
is getting ahead of
administration.
us.
No, I have roots in, never mind.
Alright, so,
The other thing is are we completely abandoning the Salesian property? You know, one of the things that he said was transparency, credibility, being mindful of the purse, the public monies.
mhm.
And, another question for Paul Mays might be, this is, okay, it'll cost this much to buy the Quattrini building, to do everything that it needs to, to happen, versus building on the Salesian property. There is nothing preventing us from going to the public and saying, these are your two options.
We already
Yeah.
made that
Well-
decision, and the decision is based on, number one, an existing building is going to be 30 to 50% cheaper than building it yourself.
But
What
if
it
we
would
don't
be
know
is-
that.
We
don't
do
know.
know
Well,
that.
we do know from like the estimated cost
Right.
from Warwick and
Just
If it
from the
shows a
construction
size
cost
similar
and
or-
because
But we
of
don't have to
the
know as big as
restrictions that
No,
are
we don't,
under,
but-
the restrictions that we would be under to
To
build a
for
building,
ourselves,
as a municipal entity, you have to put out 3 different contracts. You have to have the prevailing wage clause. You have to have the,
Right, but as Jeff said, we
Yes.
need to be transparent.
Yes.
We need to
Right.
be
but
on
all
every
of these
avenue.
things take the
open.
costs of a normal building that anyone else would do and just take almost double them. By buying an existing building, you are eliminating that.
But if we ask Mr. Mays just to say, okay, if we took this size building and we asked you to build it over there, what would the cost be? And he says it's 15 million. We say, okay, we're
Right.
done, thank you. Now we can go back to the public
That's
and
a
say, we
selling
had an
point.
engineer look at
Credibility.
this.
But I don't
he's
think
telling
you'll
me this.
ever get an architect to estimate that putting this building over there would cost us,
But Paul Mays will have the number. If it's
Without-
$180 a square foot
charging
times
us what the
15,000.
last guy did for.
But if we're gonna pay him to look at
Comparison.
this for an engineering review and maybe use one of his engineers and maybe he can recommend an appraisal, he might be willing to say, you know what, it's
Yes,
$180 a square foot for 15,000 square foot. You're looking at this over there roughly. And if it's double or triple, then we know it's a done deal. But we know we've done what we should for the public to say, we know that some of you love the Salesian property. We had an engineer gratis in with this stuff, look at it, and he tells us it's gonna be double, it's gonna be triple. It's not a viable solution.
I want to avoid us having articles like this in the paper. This seems to be such a big thing in Pike County. They're building a 5,000 square foot library for $2.5 million. I
Yeah, but
want
they
the-
have $2 million
I
in
want-
state money
I want
in the bank.
I want our credibility to be transparent. I want everyone in the community to know that we've done due diligence in presenting the proposals to them. The Salesian will cost this much, this community cannot afford it, therefore we went with Quattrini because the community can afford it. We are being responsible with public monies, that's all I'm asking.
Right, so you just want for instance, what it would cost to
That's
build
why
one.
I'm gonna have Matt see if Paul will throw something out there, just even if it's logical. $200 a square foot times 15,000, 30. So it's done.
Right, right.
But at least we did our due diligence. We covered our bases and we were
And,
transparent.
would it be beautiful to build a library there that has parking and amphitheaters and whatever? Absolutely.
Yeah.
What's the hum? What's the
That's what we're. Yeah.
It's heat,
Code,
I
I guess.
Oh,
Alright, so-
would it be wonderful? Yes, but it's
not
what we can
viable.
afford.
Right.
It's what we can afford. And Paul Mays could come back and say, folks, it is gonna cost you a lot more to make that building into the library that your staff needs.
It's not gonna happen, no.
Right, but at least we've,
But it's
Tr- at
done,
least
but
we
we do
we
it.
did our homework.
Right.
We asked, we
You
just
gotta
didn't
ask the
throw it
question.
away.
Right, you
Yeah.
have to.
At least we just didn't throw it away. Okay,
Because
so
someone will
lots
wanna know
more
why
on
we
the
didn't
agenda.
ask for
that's the
questions.
task.
That's
He's gonna
happen.
talk to Ray, find out about our viability.
Okay.
We're gonna do that and
Who's
we're
calling
gonna have all
Paul
those,
Mays?
our contact.
That will be
Our
Matt.
contact form.
Sorry, Matt.
And Ray. So we should have 2 answers tomorrow on that, then they can schedule a walk.
Matt will pop us an email, or Matt will communicate with Ellen Mary, or how will
Whatever
we
you
do it?
guys want.
Pop them
Now,
an email.
If,
Pop us an email?
do you have to have, a board vote to spend money to have Paul Mays come down?
Depends on the amount, I think. It's
Well,
over.
this, we're talking
It's going
five.
to
It's
be.
gonna be.
Yes,
Yeah.
it is.
5 and 10,000.
So we'll,
So why
in other
don't
words,
we,
does he need the green light now to spend up to a certain amount tonight? Or
because we wanna get on this.
do we
So-
vote on it when it comes time to pay the bill and hope it passes?
Submit a contract at next meeting.
In the
What's that?
contract and
He
next
should
meeting.
submit a contract at next meeting,
But
and
that's,
then
we
we
lose a
will
month.
vote on the
We
contract.
can't afford to lose a month.
We can't.
We need to call a special meeting.
Then why don't we do that then? Why don't we have it?
When we find out if the guy can come and how
Yeah,
much it's
and
gonna
it might
cost,
be
and
right.
then we'll call
So,
it special
but Matt
meeting.
needs to let us know.
Right in the middle of Christmas
Alright, so as
shopping.
soon
Get
as
down
he
here.
talks to Paul and gets a number on the him looking at that, what an engineering thing would be and this
And then-
sort of thing.
Can
I
we-
don't know if you wanna
Can
bulk it
we
together with the
telecommute a
appraisal, so it's
special
one big
meeting?
thing under building services.
I think
Or
we would
double.
I would think we'd do a separate thing. If we first we have Paul Mays.
And
Then we
then
see what he
appraise.
says.
Yeah, cause
But
if
I
he
mean,
says
should
it's
we
not worth
vote
it.
as a board for, we will spend up to $12,000 for Paul Mays and an appraisal and an engineering in one swoop, or are we gonna do
I
this
think-
all in 3
I think
levels?
we're gonna
No,
vote
three
on
separate
Paul
things.
Mays. Paul Mays is gonna send us a proposal, which we'll vote on. He'll come down, give us a report, we'll look at it, and then if it still looks like we're moving ahead, it's green light type thing,
Then we spend
then we're gonna
Have another vote and another
vote
meeting and all
to
that.
hire
Okay,
an
so
appraiser.
as soon as he's available and he puts a contract together, I'll
We'll
call
get a
a
meeting.
half an hour emergency meeting.
Right.
So
We'll
we're
get
not
together
scheduled
and
to
say-
meet
Can we
until
do it on the
December
internet?
13th. December
It's a
13th.
while.
We have in
Yeah.
the past, but I don't know. I mean, that's up to the board.
I'm sorry.
We
what was
have
the-
voted for things on the internet, so that's a
I think
board
we should.
decision.
I think so.
when
Wasn't
do
it?
we do that?
Yeah.
I've done that with Pauline in the past. She's sent
I was
stuff
gonna
over
say
the
we haven't
email
done
and
that
we'd say
since I'm on the
yes.
board.
Well,
It's
and-
about time we got into like the
I'm
late
just saying,
20th century.
I don't know how legal it is, I don't know if it's an
I don't
option, but because we're on a
before we
time
do it,
constraint.
I would like to know if it's legal, because it's not, to me, it doesn't sound legal. I could get
I
call
will
a public
double
meeting.
Yes.
It's up to you, if you wanna call emergency meeting, just so
Half-hour
we're safe,
meeting.
that's fine.
It's an
How long is it
executive
gonna go?
session
Have a
to
half
go
an
into
hour
a
work
contract,
session,
isn't
executive,
it, public
right.
meeting?
Right.
No, that's
Right.
That's
No, for
that's-
this
We're
one?
approving a
It's, we're
contract.
approving a contract,
Oh,
he's
that's-
right, it's an
that's-
executive
that's
session,
just-
so it isn't public.
And
Oh.
it's only 4 people, we only need a quorum, so if
So we're
everybody can't
discussing
make
the
it,
contract, so, right.
The only day I'm not available is Thanksgiving.
Okay, so we'll do this on Thanksgiving.
well, let's get Paul's,
Yikes.
time
Yikes.
and contract.
Believe me,
And then I'll
back
call
it up, been up
emergency
since
The
five.
problem with, in my mind, with a vote electronically, is that you can't really have a discussion easily.
Right.
And people may, 6 people may decide before the meeting, this is a great idea, I'm gonna vote for it. There could be somebody that's got a reason why we shouldn't do it, and that person could persuade the other 6.
Right.
So I'd like to have people sit down. And it's not that hard for us to run down here.
No, it isn't, it's not like we have to go
But
through.
we've
a
had
special
items
meeting.
on the internet that just were
And if my
like,
internet is
like
down and I
bulletin
can't vote,
boards
Yeah.
that we've had, we're just
I
so
vote.
much discussion. I mean,
Well,
And if it's not
just for legalities and whatever, we'll
Ju- right,
have an
just to
emergency
make sure.
meeting as soon as we get a contract that we can look at with numbers.
Yes.
I was
Sounds
just going to suggest, conference calls, can you do that?
No,
No.
You
we don't
can't,
have that.
oh,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah, no, our phone's not that good. Okay, snow removal contract renewal, right? Snow removal
All right,
contract renewal.
thank you.
Alrighty then. Matt,
Who does it now?
Oh, I'm up again, sorry. Dazing out.
Wake up, man. It's only
No.
10 o'clock.
I know. I just saw, I
You thought we were
sent the new contract for snow removal.
oh,
I was wondering what you were doing.
okay. Did we get
No,
approvals?
it's-
3 people?
Half of the agenda is
It's
left.
the same contract as last year, they didn't raise our price, it's the same guys, same contract, same, they changed the way we pay them, but it's the same amount at the end,
Who's that?
3,500, it's D-Bros.
Yeah,
Okay.
and we don't need to
They
get
did, I thought
another
they did, Danny had some
bidding.
problems, but Danny is a tough guy to
Dennis.
We
But
don't
if
have
I
any other
remember-
conflicts for the legalities,
If
nothing.
I remember last year, you had to do some shoveling out yourself. You complained
That was
that
the
you
year
had to
before.
shovel
That
out.
was
That was the year
Year
before.
That was the year before.
I was
Yeah.
pretty sure, yeah.
You were
Yeah,
there.
last
I'm
year
getting
was
old.
fine.
Holy
Yeah, I don't know what I had
time
for
flies.
breakfast, so I can't believe, yeah.
That was 2 years ago.
All right, so you,
That's
were
it,
you
that's-
satisfied with it last
Oh,
year?
yeah.
Yeah, they were very good.
So do I have a motion to
What did
And
they
we're
charge last
assuming
year?
that,
The same
I
thing.
mean, I can
Same
tell
amount,
you from what
3,500
I
for the year.
understand,
3,500.
most snowplow
Right,
contracts
that would be
this year are lower than they were last year.
Oh, ours is the same,
It's
so,
the same.
but it was much lower than the year
I'm
before.
talking
Yes,
public,
that's
so do we look at anybody else?
No, we just
Well,
kept the
with gas
same.
prices going up, I think it being the same is reasonable.
And it was a lot lower than the one we had the year before, you said.
Tremendously.
Tremendously low, yeah. He was a very good
He was
dealer,
the best
I remember
dealer
that,
we've
yeah.
Yeah, we did bid it.
We
year
did,
ago.
we did it
Yeah.
a year ago, so. I make a motion that we
So,
I'll
approve.
second.
a motion on the table is to accept the contract of D. Broyce Landscaping for the period of April 15th, 2010 through April 30th, 2011 for $3,500 for this season, which is the same price as last year. Do I have a motion? Ellen, do I have a second? Jim, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Frank, you were
Frank is
opposed.
You
opposed.
missed the vote, I think.
Oh,
Did
Frank
you
is
vote?
opposed.
Frank, you were
Frank's
opposed?
opposed.
Frank is
Thank you.
opposed.
Motion passes.
Merci. Let's see.
Okay.
Ken to Shane contract.
Now, Ken's contract isn't actually up until January 1st, but since he's been so involved in what's happening now, he came up to me and asked when he would be assured that his contract would be renewed.
Well,
He-
he can't be issued.
All right, are we in
until
executive
vote on it.
session for
Right.
that?
No.
No, and we have to be, don't we?
Well, I
Isn't
asked
it?
Matt about
Well-
that, and he said if nothing was talked about that didn't
It's not-
change,
so
we
it's
didn't
not
have to be in
actually an
executive
action item.
session.
It
That's
can
what
be an
Matt
action
said.
item if you wanted to just let it, but if you want to talk about it, we have to move it down to executive.
Right,
Oh,
that's what
okay.
Matt said.
Yeah, I don't think we can do that.
It's too soon, it's too
soon,
rushy.
and, yeah, being rushed into
And
things
January
is not
1st, he's
good.
complaining now, I mean, I can understand, but
Yeah, no,
people aren't getting raises and
no.
anything,
can
so I
wait
think
till
he can wait
January.
another 6 bloody weeks.
Okay.
Yeah.
Alright, so
Oh,
we're
we
gonna
need
Table to the
we have
next
one
meeting?
Table to
December
Well, we have
13th
next meeting
even.
is the
We have
next.
one more
Wednesday.
meeting before.
Table
Table
to
December 13th?
December
Yeah.
13th?
Right,
Thank
you
you.
go-
Well, we
I know.
have an executive meeting scheduled.
But I think that was for
That was
Ken.
for this, if you wanted to discuss it and decide tonight.
We'll move it to
But instead,
December.
we're gonna wait until December.
Right.
It's so late anyway.
Yeah, so the only
Okay.
thing I have to add under other is the wood pile. The football players went over and looked at it, they wanted to take it, but they said due to what it is, it would burn way too slowly for the bonfire, because it's like sticks and limbs and trees, and what they use are flats, like those things, and they burn like in an hour. He's like, that would take forever to put out, and they don't have that much time, but a personal
Thanks for
person,
looking.
I asked all the board members, and although that it was brought to their attention, personal people wanna go over there and use it, and I said, knock yourself out, but not literally. So, personally, they may go over and take some of the stuff, so hopefully it'll start.
Who's first?
The football board, people on the Goshen Football Youth
For their
Athletic,
personal use at their home?
yes.
Yes.
All right, I have a question. If somebody goes over there with a
And
chainsaw.
cuts their own leg off.
Well, I don't
Yeah.
think they're gonna
Injured.
cut, they're just gonna take pieces from the pile.
We don't know.
Well,
possibly.
usually the pieces are pretty, some of them are pretty heavy and
Right.
they come in easier sizes to handle. If someone gets hurt taking wood with permission from us, I assume that
I'd
there'll
rather
be a
they didn't have
lawsuit
permission.
against us.
Yeah.
Because
I'd
you're
rather they
always
didn't
in-
have our
Yeah, if they didn't have
permission.
permission, it
Alright,
would've
so I'll
been-
email them and say you can't take the wood.
No, just ignore the email.
Well, I didn't get an email, this is verbal, so there's
Oh,
nothing
well, then-
binding.
They were given.
Well, now
verbal.
And I don't even have a name, so this person was just like, oh, they might, and I was like, it was just verbal, and it was just, they might go over and look at it, they might take
Well,
it.
if we could
with
make,
no names.
if I could make another request in the name of the board to, Mr. Roddy, who has connections with the Joint Rec Commission. My home abuts a tract of land that is administered by the Joint Rec Commission, and in the last 2 or 3 weeks, it seems someone from the Joint Rec Commission has been removing firewood from that
You're by
property.
Lions Park?
Yes,
Yeah.
sir.
I help you move that.
There
Excuse
you
me?
go,
I
so was
help you
him.
move that. Actually, the girls did.
This week,
Well, it was removed a few weeks ago. We had a chipper
the
there
big
too.
tree, well, the wood that was left,
Okay, what are you saying there?
Somebody's coming
well,
to take
the
it.
wood that was left from that big tree coming down has been taken away very nicely by what appears to me to be a Joint Rec tree. And if they're taking away lumber from Lions Park, they should be able to take away lumber from
Well,
Salesian
you know,
Park.
the-
That's
when I
my
was
request.
I was there with the Lions, and we had everything chipped. We had somebody donate their time in their truck, and they chipped it all, and it's all back in the corner there, I believe. So I'm not sure. Maybe something else has happened.
Believe me, there
Something else
was
has happened. Well,
substantial
it's not
amounts
to
of
our knowledge,
lumber
we have no
there.
idea
So what
what's
are we
going
looking?
on in the library.
So
There's
what
not
are you?
much
You're
we
bringing
can
this
do
up
about
And
it.
a- And a joint wreck
somebody's
truck
looking
came
for-
and took it away,
Volunteers?
and has been taking it away for the last week,
Okay.
including today.
I can find out if they want some wood. I know where some
There you go.
at.
There you
People
go.
bring them to your
Yeah,
house
okay.
and let themselves
Will
sue
do.
you.
That's where I was
And
coming
win.
from.
Gotcha.
Is
I
there-
was asking that in behalf of the rest of the
Sorry.
board.
Sorry.
I don't know if it'll happen, it was just a thing, but
Okay.
so we have no way of knowing, so we would have no way of knowing who's doing it or how or
No,
what or
but
when or who.
these folks that you spoke to and said go in there and take,
They
we
said that,
rescind that. So that in
yes,
case somebody gets hurt on that
Yes.
property, they don't come
The
back.
football
But
team
we're
did
gonna
not
have
take
to
it.
do something about that pile of wood sometime.
Right, but I don't, unless we could have our own bonfire
I
with
mean-
the village
So that's it.
permission.
Joint wreck piled it up
Can we?
there.
Is there
Can
any
you
way
find out
that
if
we
we
can
can
get
get a
Find
temporary
out
permit and have a bloody
bonfire, too.
bonfire? Let's burn it.
Book burning.
or
We'll burn our bras.
no? Oh, let's get back here.
Okay.
A
Let's
book
find out if
and
we can
bar.
temporarily
A
burn it. I know
B&B
there's
burn,
no fires,
B&B.
Let's find out.
book
Is
and
there,
bar
is there
burning.
for all?
Is there any way that we can either
BYB to you, Doc Flowers.
BY double D's,
No one's
okay.
talking.
the town and the village, and maybe they wanna go in with their own trucks and put in wood chippers and take the stuff away for landscaping
Mulch,
around.
there you go.
Yeah, we could try. I don't know if that would be viable, but that would be wonderful.
Doubt that.
Me too,
They have
but I
enough
was trying to
wood
be
deal
friendly.
with.
But if we can get a temporary
check,
permit to
check.
burn that baby down,
I'll
then
check.
there
that
ends all
permit.
of our problems. And I
Burn,
rescind
baby,
anything I
burn.
said to
Yeah,
anyone
who's
about
gonna
helping
burn
yourself
it?
to the
Who
wood.
issues the permit?
The village.
It's in the village, so that's.
We have it in the
Well,
village.
well,
The
it's
village
our
would have to
property. It's in the
urban-
village,
would
yes.
have
I
to give
mean,
us
we
a
can be
permit.
very, very thankful that
A controlled
Tiffany did
fire.
get someone last year who came and took a lot of that
Yeah,
stuff
they did.
away. Took a huge part of that pile of
And that was a
wood,
different
put it-
guy who had a different truck. So this guy was like, "Who's gonna help me lower
And
my
And it
truck?"
was just a marvelous event.
And it would burn way too long.
Will that
so.
guy come
Well,
back?
what you?
No, because he's not on the board anymore.
Well, you would have
I
somebody
asked him
would
to.
take it if somebody helped.
Well,
Load up the
originally
truck.
he was, but then the same guy came back and said we can't because it's going to take way too long to burn.
It was
Okay.
for a
Last part.
homecoming
Okay.
bonfire.
Yeah. So let's find out about getting a temporary permit to burn it and have a controlled fire with the fire department there. I mean, let's just get rid of it.
Well, we're still on business, a new business, Madam
Yes,
Chairman.
other, yes.
In the maintain credibility and transparency vein, I talked to Matt and to David about an outfit called GoshenNewYork.info, which is a website which puts streams, town and village board meetings.
Yeah,
I arranged with them for that David could just call them and have a link put on their website to our website for
great.
people
Great.
to, I don't know if David went and did it or is gonna do it, but I talked last Friday about it, he didn't have too much time to do it. But the concept, along with the idea of maintaining credibility, gets me to the point that maybe we should maybe not be providing that service, but maybe we should be the junction point for the town and village streaming to be gotten from our website rather than GoshenNewYork.info, and that we have our website be used as a general information website for the area. I mean, I would have dreams of having all of the municipal meetings on the library website, all of the organizations in towns from the Masons to the ambulance corps, all listed and updated on our website.
I have to ask the question: who would approve whether something can be posted there?
I'm sorry?
Who would approve whether something can be posted there?
What do you mean approve?
You know, they do videos of the flooding, you know, of the bad pipes here in the village. Is that something we would feel comfortable posting on our site? Is that a political thing?
No, I
Is-
meant
is
of
it-
the meetings. I'm
Yes,
talking
I know,
about the meetings.
but his site, their site, has more than just meetings.
Oh, so
Right.
Yeah.
I don't even know about that, but we don't.
have everything, right? They just
But I'm
Yeah,
just
I
saying,
mean,
move the
I
meetings
think
over
it's
to
great.
our,
Yeah.
the streaming of the meetings to our website, that there's a central location, and then all, whatever meetings come out. Anybody who wants to go to a board meeting in town goes to the Goshen website.
Well, I think that
Well, that's what
website
his
is
website
that
provides.
right. That's what
Town,
that provides. But
village.
instead of duplicating the effort, they would just have a hot link to our archive of meetings or our
Yes,
live
but I'm
streaming
taking
meeting.
that one step further.
Right, but what I'm telling you is that you want to do what he's already doing.
Yes,
Right.
instead of him doing it.
Why?
Well,
I can think of
Because-
some reasons.
Exactly where we're looking for support, we're looking for transparency, we're
Oh.
looking for, to go out and reach the people,
Okay.
those,
17.
we're assuming the
Right.
7,000 people who don't read their,
Right, the newsletter.
the
right.
newsletter. We're giving them a reason
To
to
come
dial
to
up
our
GoshenPublicLibrary.com.
but you know,
Okay, so that they would come to our website
That's
to
what
see
I'm
the
trying
village
to
board
get,
meeting.
and that was the idea
instead of
of,
going to his website to look
Right.
at it.
but you know
No.
what?
and also, or if not that,
Right.
if not that, the idea of just having a listing of all of the organizations in towns and when they meet, and so that we
Well,
become a central point for people to go to.
The thing is too now, we are the only ones who videotape our own meeting. As far as I know, the town board meeting is videotaped by an individual. The
Yeah.
village board also.
Well,
No,
that's
well,
nail
no,
it,
but my
Joel.
point is, right, but it's not so, it's not exactly an equivalent thing to have a private video of the town board is not the same thing as our own archived video of this board meeting. So it's not, you know, it's not like the town board approved the video and now it's on our website, or, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
It's like someone's private video is now on our public
Right.
website, and I'm not sure
Right.
that's the right thing to do.
Well, just two things I want to say. Sorry.
It might be a labor of love, okay?
Yeah,
I know,
right.
I
This
know
could be a
Neil and
sticker.
Joe have a great time with this, and it's a great site. In fact, if you look at the video on flooding, that's my music in the background. We could always, now, they probably would be able to put links to our,
Right,
our
that's
videos,
probably be a
no
better-
Well, if you
problem.
wanna leave it at that, that's fine,
Yeah,
but
no,
I'm
I
just
think,
bringing
no,
up.
no, I
No.
understand where you're coming from, but I
But we
think
could
that
also, grab links to their videos and put them on our site.
Right, I was that's just
Nobody-
gonna say
nobody-
that.
no
Instead
feelings
of
are
actually
hurt and-
putting, they're already
Yeah.
hosting all those videos, they already have them all there, instead of then putting all of that on our site, taking up our,
Or we could put a link to their site.
there you go.
Whatever.
Or we just have this big circle thing going around. But links, right, links in both directions
Because
is
anybody
right.
going just to their website for their information might go, oh, look, here's some library board meetings, let's watch
Right,
these as
and
well.
then go
Right.
into
But
I think
our
we
I'm-
should
board.
start by putting ours
but-
on theirs,
I
Yeah,
just took
I-
that idea and
cause most
just
people are probably looking at
exploded
theirs.
it,
Oh, yeah,
yes.
no, it's not a bad
Sure.
idea, I
It's-
got
it's
where
in
you're
the,
coming from, but I think,
It's in the
It's-
articles, at the end of the article, the link, to their site,
right.
so
So
it's-
yeah,
it's
so if you
important
would go to
know.
their site and then there's a link to
So,
us,
yeah.
and then
We'll
here
put
we
us
would
on
have a
them.
link, even if we had a link just, oh, well, here's the information, because the village already puts all their information up, the town board puts all their, the school board has all their stuff on there. You know, if you go to the Goshen School District webpage, they have a place to link for the school board meetings and the budget and all the rest of it's right on their webpage. If we just had the links for town information, village information on our website, that I think is what,
but not the videos.
but not the actual videos, somebody
Yeah,
else already
well,
has them, somebody
nobody's
else
talking
already
about that
posted them.
anyway. We can't house
But
the
I think
Yeah.
Frank's making it in a way, I think the best argument in my mind is that the library is a source of information.
Right,
Sure.
Yeah.
exactly.
I think
If, since that's our mission,
Right,
we should be proactive in gathering together information about, among other things, our community,
right.
so that people can have access to it.
Right, well, I think the links, the information is already in existence, already organized, already formatted, already archived on the town board website. They have archives of their old meetings. They don't have the videos, but they have the archives of the minutes of the
Oh,
meetings
the
and all the
minutes,
rest of it,
that's
right.
different.
If we had the links, here's the link. If you're interested in the town, here's the
I
link.
think it's a
Here's
great
the
idea.
link.
Okay, but we're
That's
going
it.
to
We have
Not
a
the video.
calendar,
Yeah.
right, that
What-
kind of a thing, but it
all of it.
already exists for the town, it already exists for the village, it already exists for the school board. Duplicating that seems like a waste of time, energy, and web space, and we have other things to do. I think having a page with links where, okay, you want information about the town, here's town information,
Right.
here's the links to get you to this, here's the links to get you to that, and we just make sure they stay current, so that we aren't sending
Yeah,
people to
but
dead
again,
web pages.
that was part of
That
it,
is-
is that
Oh,
we're
yeah,
in
no,
the
no.
information business, and
Right.
rather
Yeah.
than
I think
sending
it's a great
somebody
idea.
away, it's,
Well,
that,
and
David?
sending somebody away,
I
but
mean, we
it's-
can supply them with the links, but we should also tell them that the school board meeting meets
Well, right,
on
we could- well,
Monday
well,
of the
right,
first
have a
day of the
calendar.
month, and
right,
that's
have
what
a
I meant, that,
community
and,
events,
and-
No, it's
have a
value add.
community events
and
calendar.
the water,
Right.
and the
Right.
Chamber of Commerce has a breakfast on this day, and.
Right, the only problem there is that to maintain a calendar is a lot of work.
Mhm.
The Chamber's already doing it.
Mhm.
So initially, I think all we can do is we can have a link
Links
on our
to-
website to community events,
Right.
Right,
community calendar.
right.
But I like the idea of people.
But I think
if they
that's
that-
a dream, and let's think about it, maybe put it in the budget for next year. Whoa.
Well,
Spend
right.
money?
But it's a lot of
You
time
know, we have a
to check the
perfectly free
dates.
Facebook page.
In the
And,
new library,
just
we will
saying.
have a community bulletin board that's digital.
Oh, Norma, you wild woman.
But really, I mean, we're in the business, that's how
it's
it
information, but if it already
and-
exists somewhere else and
and-
someone else is already
We can do the
maintaining.
links, that's
But-
We could have
But
links.
it doesn't
Yeah.
exist, but
Yeah.
nobody
Yeah.
knows where to get it.
Well, right, so
Well, now
there's
they
plenty
will.
of redundant links, you know, you come to our site,
And
there's
every
links to
time
this,
we
you go to
get
their site.
somebody who doesn't
Reciprocal
walk
thing
into
going.
the library, who doesn't have a card, who comes in on our website, is, we're getting another person, we've
Sure.
got another convert.
Okay.
Who's our webmaster?
David.
How much time
Uh,
do you
he's-
All right.
How much free time
He's
do you have?
not
David?
our webmaster, he is our architect.
Architect is an
Like
option.
You got promoted from Alpha Tech to architect.
Architect.
I promoted him
You're gonna
last
keep
week
with
from
that
Alpha Geek
Yep.
to Alpha Tech.
Yep.
All
This
right.
week he's.
Privilege of the floor,
Alpha
guys.
Geek.
Anybody
Paige,
got anything to
anything? Do I have a motion to end the meeting
Oh,
at
yes.
10:09?
Wow.
Norma, Frank, all in favor, motion
Aye.
carries.
Okay.
Alpha Geek is a compliment.